Okay, sorry for a delay, but welcome to Committee of the Whole meeting for Thursday, October 8th, 2020. Before we start, our usual disclaimer, we're excited to bring our meetings to you live online. This is a new technology for us in South Dundas, and we appreciate your patience as we iron out the process moving forward. If for any reason we experience technical difficulties on the live stream, we will do our best to get the video to you the following day. There. Okay, confirmation of agenda. You've all seen the agenda that we've had. Anything to add or take off? Yes, Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Mayor, staff would like to add one other item to the discussion items section, just water tower design concepts.
What is it?
Water tower design concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just bringing that back to the table.
Okay, so the plan is to have this meeting run to 12 with a break at 10:30. So if we get to a point that it's getting tight, we will prioritize that over others, because others we can delay to another meeting, depending on how efficient we are through the rest of it.
Sounds
okay?
Perfect.
Got it good with council? Okay, any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof this morning? The adoption of the minutes, please.
Moved by Councillor Lewis, second by Deputy Mayor Gardner, that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole held on September 24th, 2020 of the 7th Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of South Dundas be adopted as circulated.
Any discussion? All heard the motion. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So we're into 5 discussion items, and number 5A is cannabis zoning regulations. And this morning we have with us from JL Richard, Tim Chatter, and Aaron Reed. Sorry about that. So welcome to our meeting. Not sure if you know the background of why we're here, but we've had some challenges with some cannabis growing facilities in South Dundas and numerous complaints. Now, the one major one has been taken care of several weeks ago. However, we want to be, I guess we're being a little bit reactive now, but we need to kind of see where we can go as a council and municipality to figure out how we can regulate them, and I know others have done so. So I'll turn the floor over to you, and we'll go from there.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. It's Tim. Thank you for your time this morning. We've done a number of these kind of regulatory bylaws for different clients, and quite frankly, none of them have been tested. So we don't know where your ultimate authority, how far we can go with regulating these. There are differences to cannabis operations, obviously, because of all of the federal influence on the law. They have certificates that they do issue to individuals, so they can grow a certain number of plants, and they are basically beyond our control as a municipality. So we can deal with these industrial forms easily. So when there's an industrial user, I think as you saw from North Glengarry, they put some very specific rules around how they regulate an industrial form of development, including things like scrubbers and odor reduction techniques. South Dundas' zoning bylaw is pretty well up to speed because we would consider that to be a Class 2 industry, so we can invoke a lot of these requirements from them with the current zoning we have, which is just general in nature. If you want to make it explicit so that your CBO has got clear authority, we can certainly introduce some changes to the bylaw that would be explicit so that Nicole wouldn't have a problem going forward in saying, you're a cannabis operation, here's your requirements. We were aware through a brief discussion with Nicole of the one that was causing some problems. I'm glad to hear the issues have been resolved. I'm not sure how it was resolved, but that's on the table for discussion. The second piece is the agricultural growing of cannabis, which of course we can't stop. The question may come up as to the processing on a farm, because the provincial policy statement has been expanded to include a lot of uses that they would consider agriculturally related that you can get away with on a farm. We could look to see how we could impose similar restrictions to other industrial uses if someone does try to create one on a farm. And I guess the closest example I can come up with are grain drying operations. Large industrial facilities, noisy, dusty, operating 24/7, where we can invoke some certain requirements because they are indeed an industrial use, not a farm use. So happy to, now you'd had some information circulated in your agenda, and we'd circulated atop of that a separate memo that we'd done for some other municipalities that we have for general information. So open the floor to questions and discussion.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Gardner, start.
Okay. I think for me, I don't know if Nicole is prepared to kind of speak to what she needs from us, having gone through a process already that involved the OPP and stuff. If where the loopholes are, maybe I need a little bit of more information from Nicole just to figure out where the loopholes are, what we need to kind of tighten up for her to operate, what their comfort level is. And, it's really too bad that the provincial government hasn't decided to assist us with this, and it's all municipalities that have to figure it out. But for me, I'd really like to know where we were lacking. Obviously, we were caught by surprise with things, but Nicole having gone through the process, I think there's probably some lessons learned that we can work into the bylaw.
Okay, Nicole, could you give us your point of view on the operations? Have they occurred in South Dundas in 2020, and your opinion on possible fixes?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So throughout Ontario, we're not the only location where we're having difficulty. It seems that there's a hole in the system. So Health Canada is issuing licensing without circulating to municipalities. And I guess to kind of streamline our process, under the building code, the only time we would need a permit is if they construct buildings. So fortunate for us, the one operation did construct buildings, but at the time they met all of the requirements under our zoning bylaw. So there's nothing that we could have enforced. What we're seeing from other municipalities is a site plan control process for cannabis operations, which would put circulation through upper tiers, lower tiers, and any other involvement, just to make sure all avenues are covered.
That's it for now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
So when we talk about potential setbacks and areas away from residential areas, would that have assisted you with the past issue that we had? If we had setbacks, I imagine that would have given you a little bit more teeth potentially, because then the conversation's not just about the buildings.
That's right. So they do have to meet the setbacks under agricultural grow ops. The unfortunate thing is it doesn't reflect against neighboring properties.
Okay.
So, for instance, if you're a farm where you have nutrient management studies, so you have animals producing manure, then you have to meet a minimum distance separation between neighboring properties. Unfortunately, there's no regulation currently that requires that setback from other houses or other properties.
So we could potentially, in our bylaw, we could speak to setbacks, correct?
As far as I know, but I guess our planners can tell us yes or no on that. Tim, you want to answer that question on about setbacks and whether we can or cannot?
Certainly. because you can define it as a specific land use, you can establish reasonable setbacks. So yes, you can establish setbacks.
Okay. The only other comment I have is obviously because a lot of our county road network runs around our agricultural thing, I guess where we may run into trouble is if we had a setback, but then there was a county road that went around the property, would that not be a problem or no? Around road setbacks, like would the counties have to develop something to,
So setbacks on roads, counties versus
Yes, Mr.
municipal
Mayor.
roads.
Yeah, no, the setback from a road is not going to help us a lot in that case, because we are looking at a separation between a use and another use.
okay. So it's
We could
strictly,
establish a minimum setback from the street if
Okay.
we wanted to.
so it would strictly speak to the residential areas from another house, another residence, another lot, correct?
I think that appears to be the most common area for complaints, yes.
Okay, okay.
Council Lewis?
I do believe that we have to tighten up the regulations, and the setbacks, I think is one great way to start. When this all started, we didn't expect we were going to end up where we did, but we did. And so I think we have to set something up that will really help the CBO with setbacks, giving her more power. I'd like to see something done with our building permits. If somebody comes in for a building permit, you know, it's pretty hard to deny whenever they fall under all of the criteria that's already there. I think that's all I have to say for right now. Thank you.
Council Mellon?
Yeah, this is sort of a thorn in my side because they're taking advantage of the ag designation, I guess, if you will, to stick something in our face that we don't want, or we want to be able to control and whatnot, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, when you read through some of the requirements, they're going anywhere from 20 hectares required for a growing operation. I personally believe it should be higher than that even. I think we need to have that minimum distance separation. What is it right now for, maybe you said that and I didn't catch it, for, say, if I wanted to put up a new dairy barn or a new manure pit, what's the minimum distance separation requirement right now for that?
So I can speak to that. It's actually a calculation that's done based on the amount of animals you have on the farm.
Okay, then we should can we incorporate, if you will, the amount of cannabis is gonna be growing? With that, that's gonna be hard to regulate, I realize, but like, you know, if somebody's putting up, one greenhouse is gonna grow 100 plants compared to somebody that's gonna grow 10,000 plants. There's definitely a difference, especially with the smell. So I think that's something, personally, I think we need to look at. I think we need to go out as far as we can with the minimum distance separation. I think we need to have site plan control agreements before any building permit is issued. And we look at, water, wastewater, electricity, whatever it might be. But, and have those distances marked out so that we know exactly where we are. Fencing and security, I think it should be fenced up more than the operation that we had back there. Any enclosed building should be ventilated with a filter system, like whether it's greenhouses or an existing building structure, whatever, should have a filter system on there. Even with going out the max we can on the minimum.
Sorry to
separation.
interrupt,
Go
the
ahead.
council chambers is muted.
Yeah.
You gotta push on mute.
Yeah, I lost the feed as well.
Yep.
So I cut out when you were talking about fencing and security.
Yeah, okay, after the fencing and security, well, I think we need some kind of fencing, better fencing, security than what, you know. We're not trying to keep cattle in, we're trying to keep people from going in. And, you know, so I think it should look at that, and ventilation, for any, structure, whether it's a greenhouse or converting an old barn or a shed or whatever, any structure should have a ventilation system included in that. Even going out with the maximum we can on the minimum separation. Possibly even noise reduction measures if they're running generators. One thing that I think I've seen, and there was just one not that long ago north of Brockville, even if we go through all this process, if they're growing outside, how do we regulate that? Because they don't need to come in for a building permit. If they're growing it in the field, there was one large one north of Brockville that was just shut down here within the last week or so. So, you know, we gotta, I don't know how you address that, even with the minimum separation, minimum distance separation, I think that's something else we need to look at. And I think before any building permit is issued for any structure, I think it needs to be inspected for, you know, fire, whatnot. We can have some control over that, but also if they have to prove that they got all the federal and provincial permits, whatever that is required to have, you know, to be able to do what they're planning on doing. So that, you know, we know that they have got they got all their I's dotted and T's crossed, if you will. So if they don't have the federal and provincial and the Minister of Health permits or everything that they need to do to grow, like the one back by Rowena there, you know, obviously there was an issue with that. And I'm not really sure exactly what that was, but I mean, obviously they were illegal in some manner. So I think we need to include that in any building permits that might be issued, along with site plan control agreements, the minimum separation distance, and inspection for as far as fire and whatnot, and how we deal with the outdoor growing without a building. I'm gonna let somebody tell me how that's gonna be handled.
Any comments right now, Tim?
I can make a couple of comments with respect to the Health Canada regulations. Health Canada does indeed require fencing around operations, including the agricultural operation, as part of their licensing. So we can integrate with their process, I think, with Nicole in terms of how to do that. But most of these requirements you've just spoken to are classic site plan control issues. Because the site plan does give you a far more wide range of authority to ask for these things through the site plan process, which gets you out of just building code. I think Nicole's hands get tied a lot of times because the code just doesn't get involved with a lot of these buildings. And if it's an agricultural operation outside, very limited control we do have. We can try to put a separation distance in for even the growing operation from an abutting residential. I haven't seen anybody try that yet, but we can certainly look at seeing if we can put an operational thing in for the farm. Although then we're potentially getting into a normal farm practices challenge because it's considered just another crop by the province. The province role here is very, very limited. It's almost exclusively through the Health Canada licensing.
Yes.
Just a supplemental, if you will, before I'll pass it over to Councilor Wells. If the permits are in place and they've done all that, who oversees to make sure that they're in compliance with that? Is that up to us, or is that a provincial, or the Minister of Health, or who, they can say, oh yeah, we're only gonna grow 1,000, and they grow 1,700. Like, somebody has to oversee to make sure that they're staying within compliance of what they're allowed to do. What agency or what level of government would oversee that?
Health Canada does have an enforcement body that does inspections on each property. I'm not sure how quickly those inspections are done. For instance, one of the properties, it was probably at least 6 months before they got their security fencing up. So I'm not sure if that was an enforcement under Health Canada requirement, but it seems like there's a little bit of a timeline that's taking longer than usual. The only thing that we can enforce under the building code is what we have before us. So municipal bylaws and the Building Code Act itself.
Good.
Council Wells?
Yeah, Counselor Mellon actually answered a lot of my questions. I think it's hard to, for council here to try to get a bylaw going here or create one if we don't have all the stuff from the Health Canada and provincial stuff to know what we can do and what we can't do, or whether we can just go ahead and set up whatever we want. I think a good thing, like you're talking nutrient management, we could create a cannabis management plan that based on, you're not talking how many head of cattle, you're talking how many plants. If you're 10,000 plants, well, you have to be, the setback is based on if we create this cannabis management plan. So if you're growing 100 plants and you're licensed for that, well, your setback could be, let's say, 100 meters, or your 2,000 plants, well, then your setback's going to be it'll be like a flexible setback, which I think would be thing. As far as I like the idea about the site plan. It gives you, Nicole, a lot more authority to go and check to make sure everything's up. Ventilation, fencing, everything. But does the municipality, if we know there's something coming in as far as cannabis, do we have to interact with Health Canada? Like, I know they're supposed to issue a license, but do we have to go and say, okay, we need someone out here to see if they're up to their requirements for their license, and so we can implement our bylaw? You know, like if they're interacting, that makes sense. I don't know, but I
So
guess.
we don't have access to Health Canada enforcement currently. I know the OPP has a direct line to Health Canada to make sure those licenses are valid on the property themselves. So we reach out, if we find out about an operation, we reach out to OPP and they verify if there's a license or not. We also, if we go on site and they have cannabis growing, we can request that they show us the license because they have to keep it on site.
Now, is that just for, because as we know, up the road, we can assume something's going on there. Do we have authority, Nicole, to go and check inside buildings, like industrial buildings, what's going on? Or is this just implicated to outdoor stuff? Like building
No, so
permit stuff?
we do have the authority to inspect buildings, and the one that you're speaking of, we do have an order against the property because they're using the building without a proper permit. So we do have avenues to enforce. It's just, there's just a disconnect between municipalities and Health Canada.
So
And
if
we're
we-
not really sure how to make that connection.
Okay, so if we have an order against that building we're talking about here, and we know, like, how do we enforce a bylaw then if, like, the OPP has to step in, or Health Canada has to step in, or would our bylaw overrule? I guess it wouldn't overrule Health Canada, I don't know. But like something like that, Health Canada or the province or OPP or someone should be, like, obviously, I'm sure you sent your paperwork to the OPP or Health Canada, whoever, and no one's doing nothing about it yet. So,
Yes, so the order is just under the Building Code Act, so that I'm the governing body on that. So I have to enforce that they meet the requirements, otherwise we have to charge under Part 3 of the Provincial Offences Act, and then go to court.
So that
So
doesn't
Health
reflect
Canada
back to
and,
the OPP then?
sorry, go ahead.
That doesn't reflect back to the OPP then, like any, it's just based on the Ontario Building Code that we would be taking them to court, correct?
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
so OPP are only involved if there's a criminal act. So if they have licensing, OPP, their hands are kind of tied.
But in that case up there, like, if the OPP, you're doing your job, right, so exactly the way it should be done, but they're not doing their job. If the OPP, whether it's that zone industrial or whatever, should be able to call Health Canada and find out whether that civic number is licensed for it, and like,
Yeah, so that property is licensed. They have licensing for a number of plants, like over 1,000 actually. And the reason why I put the order on the property is because there's been no permits for construction or change of use under the building code.
yeah, so that's like a renovation,
That's right.
building permit, yeah, okay, I fully understand. Yeah, I guess I have nothing more, like, there's quite a few options we can put in this bylaw to, either make people don't wanna do it, or just follow the rules. That's it for now, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I have my list. So I'll preface by saying that, that the email trail to my computer concerning the one operation that was shut down in South Dundas. And for your information, Tim, that was similar to the ones that have been shut down in Eastern Ontario for growing more than their license. And OPP lets it grow to the end and then takes the whole thing out and says, see you in court, so that's good. But however, we need to kind of avoid them. I don't want to get to that point again if we can. I was the one that kind of instigated it, but I'm sure council's kind of on the same board that we need to come up with a plan to regulate cannabis production and processing. And we have sold property to a potential processor in South Dundas, so we have to recognize that we've already started that ball rolling. However, it is at the end of our industrial area, and we may have to think about how we're going to deal with some issues with it. Setbacks. So the biggest challenge with all these facilities is odor. The larger they are, the worse they are. The one in Rowena was certainly large enough, and even being outside and well ventilated, it still caused some serious concerns for some neighbors, and some of these neighbors were well past 150 meters. So we gotta be reasonable. However, those who want to do this and do it legally, and Health Canada has been a thorn, because I know our local MPP has been working diligently to try to help us fix these problems, but they've allowed these operations to occur. They license them. However, they don't have a good enforcement branch to deal with the headaches. And as we all know now, it's Ontario-wide, it's probably countrywide, where grow-ops have just been allowed to keep on going and beyond licensing, because it's the Wild West. You can say, well, you got a rule, but if nobody enforces the rule, it really doesn't matter. And OPP, they are in a challenging situation, because it's regulated by an authority of Health Canada that wants to do their own regulating. And, I kind of feel a little bit of sympathetic to the OPP, because for years and years and years, they've been trying to deal with cannabis grown willy-nilly within all jurisdictions of Ontario. And I'm sure Councillor Mellon maybe doesn't live far enough off the beaten track, but I know I've had plants within my cornfields for many years and been asked for them to go in and take it out. And now to be honest, I don't think we have to worry about that anymore, because people will just do it legally, and that's okay. But they still got to do it right. The one it seems like the big ones seem to have some criminal organizations behind them. It's, doesn't take, I'm not gonna try to be discriminatory, but, people are coming from the Toronto area, GTA. They figure, well, we'll go to middle of nowhere, Ontario, and set up an operation, and the country hicks won't even know who we are when we leave, but they're getting caught now, which is a good thing. So I'm in the books that, I look at North Glen setbacks. I think 150 meters probably isn't enough, depending on where it is. Like that Rowena operation could have been probably another half kilometer to the north and wouldn't have affected anybody. But, where it was, there was enough houses around to deal with it. If it's in a structure, I think it needs to have air control. We have the one up on Highway 2 and Flag. You can smell that as you drive by. There's no doubt about it. There's no air control there. We have another operation in the east end of Morrisburg that may be out of the road, but it's still kind of under the radar. The Rowena one was pretty obvious. There's one in another area of South Dundas, Glen Stewart, that not sure it's there or not, but it doesn't seem to have generated the discussions that the Rowena one did. I think anybody who wants to do a facility, whether it deals with a building code or a site plan, needs to show their proof of Health Canada license, so we know they're at least legit. And if they follow the license, fencing's not an issue. They're supposed to fence. That's just the law. I did read that, so. I'll show you inspectors. I think if we're going to do this, we need some good definitions of what's a sensitive land use and what's not. If it's going to be indoor, I think it should be zoned on an industrial section of property. At least then we can regulate it in the industrial section and have odor control. Outdoors might be a challenge because it could be in the ag and rural areas. I wouldn't put an outdoor in an industrial park because most of them will be close enough to sensitive land uses that even, let's say it was in let's say near Councillor Wells's operation up in Prospect, if he doesn't want to deal with the smell, then that's not fair to him and his business either. As for dealing with open field, that could be a challenge. I would say, how do you deal with that? Because there are crops out there that farmers actually grow that do have an odor. There's also manure spreading that happens that is only regulated by the Nutrient Management Act to a point. If you haven't gone through the process, there's no real regulations to how far you spread toward your neighbors, and most of the ag community is friendly toward their local residents, but not all. And I don't want to get down that road and dealing with that mess. I don't think that's our bailiwick, and I think, as Tim has mentioned, normal farming practices will probably crunch that down. I like the idea of site control plan for anybody who comes in for a building permit, whether it's in the open or not, and then we can figure out where the sensitive land uses are and go from there. But I think the key will be dealing with the odors and how we're going to deal with them and how far you want to go. And you got to be somewhat reasonable because, 150 meters seems like a lot, but with the right wind, 150 meters is not enough. And it's going to be hard to go regulate by size too. I think that's going to be a big challenge. Like, that was big. They weren't supposed to be that big, but one greenhouse can smell just as bad as 30. It amplifies, there's no doubt about it, but one still can cause issues. So I would at least start with something like North Glens or stronger, and go from there. And I know that, we may be challenged, so be it. Let's go, because, I've heard enough this summer that we need to do something. Doing nothing is not an answer anymore. There's no doubt about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, going to the setbacks for this potential bylaw, like Mayor was saying about the property we already sold, I don't know how deep that property is, but we have to be careful. We make a setback and we sold them the property knowing they're gonna be in the setback. We put in the bylaw, wouldn't give them enough land to do what they originally planned. So we could create the bylaw, but we would have to exempt something, like a one-time exemption from the bylaw for the property we already sold, wouldn't we, Mayor?
It's possible. Tim, you address that, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. This is a classic example of where I think we would try to draft the bylaw to say there's a minimum separation distance unless you do all of the handling and ventilation and odor reduction. If you show us you've got all those, you should be able to reduce those setbacks. My company deals with enough major industrial producers that have these problems on a regular basis, not just cannabis. And there's lots of technology out there on the air exchange equipment that can reduce the odor. So I think we'd organize the bylaw around, you shall provide this much of a setback unless you provide integration into the process of how you're going to reduce the odors. Odor control is a very not very objective. It's very subjective science. But I mean, we have tools out there we can make clear how we expect them to deal with it. So I think that shouldn't be an issue. So a combination of the zoning bylaw and site plan control regulation should give Nicole more than enough authority to ask for information and deal with the issues you've highlighted.
So one comment I'll say before we go on, Councilor Wells, is Smith Falls is known for being the cannabis or marijuana capital of Ontario because of what Tweed has done there, or Canopy Grow. Smith Falls used to smell like chocolate. I haven't been in Smith Falls, but I'll pretty well guarantee it doesn't smell like cannabis every day either. So that means a big factory of that size can do odor control. Anybody can do it. They can
sure.
just do it. It's called the cost of business, right?
Because actually, 2 months ago, I was up doing a job at Smith Falls, and we were 2 blocks over from the plant, picking up some trusses, and there was absolutely, you didn't smell anything. Like, I wasn't thinking about the plant at the time, but now when we were there, and we were there for a good 3 hours in that town, and no, there was no smell. And this one here, like I was saying, with the setbacks for this one we already sold, it's my understanding that it's not gonna be a grow up anyways. It's a retraction thing, but again, it would still fall under the same bylaw, I think, like an oil retraction. Or is there gonna have to be a separate thing, or Tim, could we just add that in there as anything pertaining to cannabis when we try to create this bylaw, if that makes sense?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes,
ahead.
indeed, we would cover all of the different forms of operations that were being contemplated through cannabis, which is oil extraction. They're now into creating edibles, they're creating drinks. So all of those various aspects of cannabis we can include in the bylaw.
Okay.
I need to table this with council. We do work for Canopy Growth, and we've done extensive work for them in Smith Falls. So we are familiar with those kind of air handling equipment pieces, which is why I can say indeed it can be done.
Go ahead, Councilor Mellon.
Yeah, I'm sitting here and I like the discussion, and we're, you know, I think everybody's sort of on the same page here. The difference between this operation and, say, Smith Falls, obviously there's a big difference as far as regulation and control and whatnot. It's sort of a different ballgame altogether. Could we make anything that comes in as far as the growing of cannabis fall under that type of a bylaw, the regulations that they have in Smith Falls. Because you go by these, I've been by one near Oxford Station, and it's locked up like Fort Knox. There's ventilation systems, it's the whole bit. It's no, and there's houses that are literally the length of this room away from them. Can we, in our bylaw, make it the same as what they have to do for pharmaceutical, I guess, production or whatever? Make it, just, if you're gonna grow cannabis out in the back 40, it has to be the same as if you're growing cannabis like a Smith Falls or an Oxford Station, that type of operation. I don't know if that's, I'm just thinking that as we go along here. I just know if that's a possibility or not.
Mr. Mayor, we don't see any difference in those two operations from a land use perspective, so yes, you can regulate them the very same.
Nope, I think it's a very good discussion we're having. And I think that we do have to implicate some rules and regulations, because I think we're kind of getting out of hand here. And I do like that idea of no smell, because I know when I go for a Sunday afternoon drive, you drive by these places and it gets real potent.
Yeah, I like the discussion. I think I'd be willing to push the bar a little bit on setting back maybe further from residential than has been expressed by some of our comparables. I'm also wondering too if there's an appetite to at some point craft something, motion to the province, just putting it on record about the struggles of municipalities. I know it's been done, but it might be nice to have South Dundas kind of stand up and circulate, maybe not.
Maybe. I know AMO's trying to do some things on cannabis, but I think the biggest challenge is it's not provincial. It's a federal thing, and it's just like any other jurisdiction. Once you start going up the food chain, they think they're bigger than the rest of us underneath, so they don't have to talk, and it's not really right either, so.
Well, even if they expanded they'd have to do a law and all this stuff, but even if they expand or create a mandate for change somewhat the conversation around what the OPP can and cannot do as far as partnering with the municipality, that type of thing, maybe that would have some, some bite to it if it's more about supporting the Ontario Provincial Police and because they're frustrated too, and that might, I don't know. It's an interest, because it's going to keep coming up, and it doesn't seem like there seems to be much movement provincially to even really deal with it.
No, as I said, they just pass it on.
Yeah.
They can't.
Yeah,
It's not their.
yeah.
They didn't create the problem, so they don't want to deal with the problem.
Yeah, but I mean, in my mind, if you have an operation that's federally regulated, then having the ability of the provincial police or even the RCMP, have been around all summer.
That they have.
Even the RCMP having that mandate to work with the local municipality to make sure everything's there. I mean, if you have 3 different jurisdictions show up on your property, that will give pause to whoever's growing this stuff. If they've got RCMP, OPP, and the municipality working up as a team to kind of get credentials and all that fun stuff, that does send a better message than having our guys go individually and then so forth. So
Something that came in my mind, because I'll be honest, I have a challenging the province on this, because they're just going to say not our problem.
yep,
And I understand that. They didn't create the problem. Is that we do as much as we can to support MPP Duncan and anything he can do. Realize he's on the other side of the fence. And Parliament's not normal per se. But, if we if we feel strongly about it, and maybe some others feel strongly about it, and send him, give him a letter for ammunition where he stands up in question period and said, we have all these problems. And I know they're gonna say, well, it's the least of our problems dealing with cannabis when we're dealing with a pandemic right now, but someday it has to be dealt with. And if it's mentioned on record in Parliament, that might get some things going at Health Canada, because then the health minister sees it and others see it too. So
Yeah.
that, I think that's a better avenue than
Yeah, I
trying
think
to
so.
deal with our
Yeah.
local provincial.
I
So
think
that may be
so.
something we want to do once we get this whole.
Craft something and have, like I said, the feds, government, it might not be on the radar, but the Health Canada, the RCMP, the CBSA, it's all on their radar, and those are all federal agencies, so that might be, yeah, I like that, just to get something said.
So we've had a good discussion. Tim, have you have enough information to go back and give us a draft bylaw with, trying to tighten up and regulate cannabis, growing and processing, and then, give us a draft, recommendation, and then maybe we can discuss it and deal with it, and then, it might be a back and forth a few times, but I'd rather do that than put something willy-nilly together and then wish we didn't, because it's got to be, as you say, it's got to be reasonable. We might be challenged, but we'd be more challenged if we do something that isn't even close to right.
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Mayor. We thank you for the discussion this morning. I think that my team's got a good handle now on what you're looking for. We will come back to you with two separate recommendations. One will be some zoning amendments, and one would be to enact a site plan control bylaw that speaks to this issue. I'll have a conversation with your staff about the site plan control bylaw and how far you want to introduce a bylaw to that effect, because there's other issues with the site plan bylaw that we've been looking at for a couple of years already. So we'll come back to you definitely with a couple of recommendations.
Okay.
And I'll sit down with the CAO and your clerk and deputy clerk and figure out just go along with Nicole.
Okay. Anything further from council on that subject? Okay, good on that, Tim. So we'll move on to our next discussion topic that's been brought up due to an issue at one of the local Airbnbs and that short-term rental policy. So I'll let you speak to that, and Nicole, and then we'll go from there.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. I think Nicole, if you want to lead off on this, Nicole, because you've been trying to deal with a couple of issues, so then we can kind of fill in the blanks for you on what other people have been up to on this matter.
Okay, that's good. Nicole, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and Tim. So recently we received a written complaint from one of the residents that there is an Airbnb along the waterfront that is attracting groups from Toronto area, and people are not social distancing or following any COVID protocols under the health unit guidelines. This is, from what I understand, the only complaint that we received. However, there are close to 10 Airbnbs within South Dundas that are not being regulated currently. And that's only because we don't have any regulations in place.
Do you?
I can answer any questions if you have.
So from your point of view as a building official, Nicole, do you see potential issues that you believe should be addressed at short-term rentals or Airbnbs more so than residential units, because most of them are an old residential unit? From a health, safety, building code, whatever.
Yeah, the only potential issues we would have is if they're renovating the places, which is quite often they're renovating before they rent it out. And a lot of people aren't aware that certain renovations do require permits. So if you're installing new plumbing in the building, or if you're changing walls, stuff like that, you definitely do need a permit, and we want to make sure that those are inspected for health and safety of the occupants. As to people coming into So for instance, if you're renting a portion of your house and you currently live there, I don't see an issue with it, as long as proper entrances are there. So I think having some sort of bylaw to regulate would initiate an inspection for one, and make sure people are safe in doing that.
Okay, and I think you mentioned what I would say might be one of those key issues is from a health, safety, and evacuation point of view, if there's enough entrances and exits for people to get out in case there is an emergency. So if everybody has to go out the same door, then I could see some challenges, so. And I know we've regulated B&Bs to that point, so we have to be careful that Airbnbs are either similar or at least thought of, so. Tim?
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, that's pretty good summary of what the issues are. There is one. We get into a combination now again, just kind of like with cannabis. You end up with the opportunity to establish some rules around Airbnbs in your zoning bylaw. And you also have a need to enact a licensing bylaw because it has far more teeth in terms of anybody who's already existing under a zoning bylaw amendment, they automatically get exempted as being grandfathered. So zoning has its own inherent limitations, whereas licensing, you can put an automatic annual requirement for renewals, and everybody has to do one, period, which then can trigger a lot of these health and safety inspections and making sure that it's done properly and operated properly, which the zoning doesn't give you a lot of teeth. You'd had some information circulated from the city of Ottawa, which was similar. Aaron was able to have a conversation yesterday with Prince Edward County, which has just enacted some new regulations, and with Niagara-on-the-Lake, which has got a similar approach. And I can say, again, it's the doubling up of bylaws to give you the authority you would need to deal with this issue really effectively.
Okay.
So it becomes a question of how far do you want to take this in terms of your investment, not just in time in creating a bylaw, but also in enforcing.
Okay, good points. I did sit through a presentation last fall about Prince Edward County regulating or considering regulating Airbnbs because of the numbers, and because the numbers are pretty significant in Prince Edward County versus South Dundas, there's no doubt about it. So it was starting to impact their housing pricing, housing availability. So that was, they were seeing those challenges, and they were also seeing the challenges from a health and safety point of view. So anyway, so we'll go around the table. I would say it's a starting industry in South Dundas. I do know of one that is up the road from my place, and I haven't seen any issues besides a property dispute with the neighbor. But other than that, from a rental point of view, it's done well. So, Council Wells, start on this corner.
Yeah, what I think it's gonna be hard to regulate with this is to actually prove that it's a Airbnb, because someone could go there and just say, well, they're just our friends over here for this weekend, and whether you have a bylaw in place or not, who are we to say they're not friends? And how do we find if they're being paid? I think we should just go with, like you said, Tim, with the bylaws we have in place for the ones that do it full time. I definitely believe what I've heard from people on different ones here, that something has to be done, but I'm gonna think it's gonna be kinda hard to enforce that if, especially on short terms, if they're doing it for a couple months a year. I could be wrong, but I definitely agree we have to have something in place, definitely for for safety of the people that use these, Airbnbs. It's not up to them to make sure their places where they're staying is up to code. And that would come back to us, as far as I'm concerned, like we gotta make sure, everything's up and stuff. I'm just trying to figure out, I think it's gonna be hard on this short-term stuff that they do it for a month and they don't do it for a month, and they might do it for a weekend here and there, and so I think it's gonna be issue that way, but, that's about all I have right now, Mayor. I'll just hear the rest of the council.
Council Mellon?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mayor Byvells. To Councilor Wells' point, it probably is going to be hard on the ones that just, try to regulate just on a, but if anybody's advertising that they're renting these things out in, there are places you can go, websites and whatnot, then I think that would kick in. And if they are, if this is a source of income, for them, then they should have to, make sure it's registered, it's inspected for, like you say, for safety and fire and whatnot. Make sure it's approved that way. So, and in doing that also, I think, especially anybody that's on private septic, they gotta make sure, that I don't know if we can, make it go down, like, that could be a concern, especially in some areas, if, if a septic system is designed for a house of 2 people, and all of a sudden you're renting that out to, you're renting 4 rooms out of, out of your home, all of a sudden your septic is just, quadruple. I don't know if that would, that section 8 under the building code, or whatever section that is under the building code, the septic portion of it, I think that may have to be maybe explored some more to make sure that there's adequate septic there besides the fire and whatnot. I see in some of these that they have, what do they call them, laneway suites, anybody that brings if it's in the house, if it's in a resident's house and that's the primary residence, is, he's still living there, I'm still living there, and rent out a room or 2 or whatever. That's one thing, but like, I'm not so sure on these laneway units or whatever you call them. Because there, we lose some control, I think, on that. And as far as I'm concerned, there should be, 1 residential unit, building, if you will, per lot. So I'm a little bit, skeptical on that one, that, I forget how they're described in wherever I saw that, but, so I think laneway suites, there could be in the back, basically a trailer or something in somebody's backyard, and you rent it out, so I think we have to maybe look at that too. Make sure that, if, would the tax rate or class be changed if they're doing an A and B, like on my bed and breakfast? Or is it a different, is it tax different from a residential compared to, say, a bed and breakfast? I mean, are they paying more, like a different tax rate? No, okay, well then, I don't think, the bed and breakfasts are working fine, and I think we don't wanna, impose on that, so, I didn't know if there was a difference in the tax, That's about all I guess I got scribbled down here, right now, Mayor Byvells.
Okay, so just something I thought of from from our zoning point of view, can people actually do a secondary residence on their main lot, like a laneway or whatever currently in South Dundas? Tim or Nicole?
Nicole, you can start.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We don't currently have any provisions for secondary dwelling units unless it's an accessory to an agricultural use. So if you have a farm property with a primary house, you can have a second dwelling on the property if it's accessory to the farm use. So if you have farm workers that you want to live on the property, you can do that. We don't currently have any provisions for any other secondary dwelling units or, Ottawa calls them coach houses, other places call them laneway homes. We don't have provisions for those currently.
So they're not allowed in theory.
That's right. So they would need a zoning bylaw amendment to have them on the property.
Okay, now, when it comes
So
to.
what we, sorry, Mr. Mayor, what we do allow in the bylaw are the bed and breakfasts to an extent where you can have a bedroom that you can rent to somebody. It doesn't necessarily provide them with separate facilities such as a kitchen facility. And it's because it was always thought that, those kind of units would be providing the breakfast in an area which is shared by the owners of the house. Part of the issue with the Airbnbs is they tend to try to create kitchenettes or something inside units. So that a person could rent the bedroom and a sitting room and bathroom and then have some form of small kitchen facility where they can be self-sufficient, which is different than a bed and breakfast. Right now, I think from what I heard in the discussion with the party house, the rental of an entire house is where your problem is. So we could go back and look at your B&B rules and see how to amend those to include short-term rentals within a house, to exclude the laneway houses or a secondary dwelling or whatever you want to call them. And that is primarily where Prince Edward County landed, and some others have done the same kind of restriction because they want to restrict these party houses from creeping up, which is where the one on the waterfront seems to be falling into that definition. So you could say it's not legal in that situation.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can add to that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
So I spoke to the planner at the town of Niagara on the Lake yesterday, and in their zoning bylaw, they have defined various types of short-term rentals, and within each type, there's a maximum amount of rooms that are able to be rented. And then with that, Nicole, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the building code does say that it's 2 people per bedroom. So if you're renting out 3 bedrooms, that's a max of 6 people that are able to be renting there at one given time.
Okay. A question I have.
And that gets us back into the relationship to the septics as well. Because if you create additional units, we can evaluate the septic capacity and capability, as well as the well, making sure it has enough production capacity to be able to handle that. This could fall into a site plan issue as well, if you've got additional parking and things like that, where you have to want to look at that issue. So we could look, I think that would be the direction for an amendment to the bylaw, to make it clear how you see Airbnbs fitting in South Dundas. Just setting the baseline for everybody to know how to function.
Okay, I think Councilor Mellon was concerned about everybody's septic field because of the South Nation background. He's been well drilled in on that one, and it does make logical sense. I won't disagree. So I have to ask this because Councilor Mellon brought it up. We allow a separate unit on a farm situation, correct, Nicole?
Yes, that's correct. So,
Okay.
we do allow an accessory to the farm use.
Okay, but it doesn't address specifically its uses, does it?
No, it does not. So I think we do need some provisions for secondary units, which we can discuss with Tim's team about in the future. But for this discussion, I think we're just talking about the Airbnb.
Okay, well, you can say that, but there is an Airbnb that's on a farm that uses a secondary unit. Go ahead.
Yeah, technically that's classified as illegal.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you, that's an advertised use. Go ahead, Councilor Lewis.
I'm new on this Airbnb, but could we not pass a bylaw, or do we have it in a bylaw that for short-term rentals, like that just blows my mind whenever I hear of a short-term rental. When you go to rent a place, do you not have to rent it for so long, a certain period of time, instead of renting it for a weekend?
So it's similar to renting out a hotel, Councilor Lewis. So you would go onto the property, you would rent out the unit just for the day or for the weekend, and that's why it's considered short term.
And there are no regulations that differentiate it from a long-term lease.
Wow, that blows my mind. Well, with this COVID-19 around, do we not enforce the number of people that we allow at a facility? If we know that it's a party house?
Yeah, so under the emergency order by the province, currently we're only educating, we're not enforcing, and we can't enforce if we don't have staff on at the time, nor can we enforce if we're told about it after the party's happened. So the complaint came in after the party happened. The gentleman was advised that if it happens, please call the OPP because they do have enforcement avenues stronger than what our municipal bylaw officers have. And I'm not sure if it's happened again. I only know of the one occurrence, so.
Okay, thank you. That's enough for now.
I'm sure you have a list, and that's okay.
Yeah, okay, so first things with Airbnbs. Traditionally, they started up because tourist areas had a lack of accommodation. So in South Dundas, we had a lack of accommodation. We had a hotel, and then we had some B&Bs, and we didn't have Airbnbs. So I'm somebody who actually prefers Airbnb. There, to Councillor Wells's question, there's actually a site that you go on, and they're managed on that site. You post your listing and stuff. I've actually pulled it up. We don't have a ton in South Dundas. Most of them look quite nice, to be honest with you. There's not too many shacks in people's driveways where people are renting them out, and there's no fire escapes. I think what I would like to see is a bit of a balance. I understand the problem with the party house, but our residents need to understand the difference between a police matter and a municipal power. And if we go to the extreme, when we're looking at the comparables of Ottawa, Toronto, Niagara-on-the-Lake, that would be a very nice problem to have, because it would mean that we would absolutely have a huge tourist season with thousands of people coming, and then we'd have the problem of having Airbnbs. I want people to be safe, but I also don't want to absolutely crush this kind of innovative way of where there is a following with the Airbnbs, where you are welcoming people to your area, and they do go on and look and see. Whenever I went to PEI, Airbnb was actually the option I was looking at. It's cottage, and I've stayed at Airbnbs in Picton, and it's been wonderful. And to the mayor's point, they have had a problem in Picton, because as we're walking around the block at the beautiful Airbnb that we stayed in, you can see all these properties, and they're saying perfect Airbnb, and it's probably double the price than it would have been years previous. But we really, really want to make sure that we don't overreact, in the sense that this is a way, whenever people, if they're going to enjoy the Upper Canada Playhouse, if they're going to do whatever, they will go on, and there's a huge following with the Airbnbs. I don't want to quash anyone's little enterprise, if you will, because on the flip side, they are offering us a service, which is providing another type of accommodation, which tourists, consumers are asking for. It's another type of accommodation. So I'd like to see us come up with something that promotes the safety, but absolutely does not, is not so heavy-handed that it just kills it, because we will be missing out on folks that now want to stay in Airbnbs, and that would be a darn shame. So
That's it?
I think so.
Okay, so I do agree with you, Deputy Mayor Gardner. I think we don't want to overreact. We don't have, it's a starting industry in South Dundas. As I said, the one that's, it's 300, no, it's not even 250 meters away from my place. There's, on a usual weekend, 2 or 3, maybe 4 vehicles in the yard. I'm pretty sure it's split in 2, and maybe that wasn't done right, but that's not my bailiwick. But from an operational point of view, the worst thing I've heard is about 3 or 4 Sea-Doos out in the St. Lawrence River making a racket all day, which they're allowed to do. I'm not, as long as they follow all boating regulations, which again is not our problem, is done right. If there's issues with that, it's not our problem. We can't regulate every little thing from a law point of view. OPP needs to, or whoever needs to do their job in that regard, whether it's Coast Guard or whatever. But I guess if I'm going to have a concern, is that at the health and safety of the residents and those who want to do Airbnbs, do them right. And because they'll end up being the Wild West if we don't say anything. I think having a licensing program that is similar to what we would do to bed and breakfasts or our hotel industry, to ensure that they do things right, things are up to code, renovations are done right, there's exits for those who need to get out if there's an emergency in one section of the house, stuff like that. I don't want to discourage it, because I think it's another opportunity for bringing people to South Dundas. It's part of our tourism sector. If somebody comes from afar and believes that we're a welcoming community, then that's not really a bad thing if they respect people that are already in South Dundas and treat us well, and we'll treat them well. It's a two-way street. The risk is party houses. I know that it does happen, which is very unfortunate. However, we can only do so much, and if it becomes an issue, then it becomes an OPP or whatever jurisdiction that we can do. But I think I don't think starting with a licensing effect is not a bad thing. I think that just makes sure that those who do rent in South Dundas are cared for from a safety point of view. We're not trying to shut them down, just got to do things right. It's no different than bed and breakfast. I know that we had one in South Dundas that had to update everything, cost them a pile of money. So we have to keep that in mind too, that people think running Airbnb is a cheap way of making money, and possibly it is, but it still has to be done right. I'm not here to zone them out, that's for sure. I know the issue up in Iroquois sounds more like an OPP issue than anything else. However, if this operator wants to run things right, then I think we need the legal right to make sure that we can make sure that those who use the facility are safe and everything's done right. That would be my point of view on Airbnbs at this time. If we get to Prince Edward County, that's a different ball of wax. We're not close to that, but if we have licensing, at least we got to start.
Yeah, very good, Mayor. I agree with everything you say, and Deputy Mayor too. These Airbnbs, what I can see, the reason they get started up is to be excluded from what bed and breakfast has to comply to. And I think the main thing is for the safety of the people who are using it, which is our responsibility to enforce these Airbnbs. So my recommendation would be that they follow basically the same guidelines as the bed and breakfast, and are be licensed, entitled to our CBO to go in and do inspections prior to letting people stay there, just to make sure everything's safe. And as far as the party house, like the people up there in Iroquois, it's going through, I agree with the mayor, it's an OPP thing, and they have to step up their plane, or their game if the complaints come in, because it's hard for us to, a party can start like in matter, doesn't start off to be a party, then all of a sudden it's a party. So been to a few of them myself, so it's hard for us to enforce that, so my thing would say if we just put Airbnbs kind of on the same playing field as bed and breakfast and make sure everything's good, that our Nicole can check things out, I think be a good start to making this work.
Okay.
That's it for me, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with what's being said, like, treated at the same, perspective as bed and breakfast and, just for fire and safety measures and building code and whatnot. And the party house mentality, I mean, that can happen, that can happen anywhere. That can happen in my house, and I think it has when I wasn't there. But anyways, that can happen anywhere, and I mean, like Councillor Wells and yourself has alluded to, it's an OPP matter, so I think we gotta keep in mind what we have jurisdiction and what we have control over. We're not sending bylaw out because somebody's racing up and down the street or fighting or whatever they might be doing, making, so anyways, I think carry on with what has been suggested.
I think I have to agree with all my colleagues. Maybe we should have a license, but people have to understand that there is a difference between OPP matters and CBO matters. And I don't really think that what I'm hearing is a lot of doing with the CBO. It's more law enforcement than anything at all. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. Maybe we need to do some education on our social media about what defines a police officer versus a bylaw enforcement officer. Those are two similar in enforcement, but one is very elevated compared to the other, because it does seem, since I've sat here, that there does seem to be a confusion with our residents over what different enforcement agencies do. And if they're calling us first and waiting for a call back on Monday, whenever they're saying that it's dangerous and everything else, and they're reluctant to call the OPP, that's a problem, because it's absolutely an OPP matter. So I think maybe, I'm not saying it's our job to do it, but maybe a little bit of education and communication wouldn't hurt. As far as the B&B comparison to an Airbnb, I think that there will be elements where they will fall in the same category, and then there's going to be elements where they don't. Because traditionally with an Airbnb, I could open up an Airbnb and only rent it out 2 weeks out of the year. That is not the same as having a B&B that is run 365 days a year, and you will quash that short-term thing if you do that, if you put them equal. So absolutely agree with the safety and the fire exits and all that fun stuff. I would not want to see anyone get hurt. I think that there's comparables, but I think if we have them both at the same level, you'll just kill the Airbnbs. There's no way. Why would you bother? Right. So I think there's an important distinction in some ways where they are different, and maybe it's a case of days that you're going to be renting. Maybe that's how you define it. That if it's under so many days, it falls as an Airbnb, and if it's over so many days, then you're a bed and breakfast. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Just one more comment to Deputy Mayor's there about. I can see what you're saying about the 2 weeks out of the year, whatever, but I would hate to have someone go there for that one weekend in those 2 weeks or 2 weekends, and everything's up to code and that, because basically, if someone gets killed because of that, and the municipality didn't have anything in place just because it's an Airbnb and things aren't up to standard, so basically, the only difference from a bed and breakfast to an Airbnb, and it doesn't matter how many days they do it, you still, the cost is always going to come back to the safety point, like your egress exits and all that stuff to make sure everything's up there. Like, it's still going to cost the same. Like, I don't know how we justify, okay, they're only open. I see Nicole's hand on, maybe put me in my place before I keep babbling on.
Okay, Nicole, go ahead.
I think the first step is just to initiate the licensing. That way we could do an initial inspection to determine what requirements they need for that specific unit they're using. Because then each one is going to be separate. One person might be renting out one room. One person might be renting an entire floor. So the fire separations between different ones are going to be different. And we just need to make sure that we have that initial inspection and final inspection to make sure those people going in there to rent the units are safe in the long run.
Yeah, I was a roundabout way saying that, like everything, but it's kind of, I think it's all the same at the end of the day. I like the idea of having them here. It's just, I want to make sure everything's safe for everyone.
Yep.
I don't know if you heard what I said. But
I think I did.
I said that I absolutely thought that they should be compliant like a B&B for safety and health, fire exits, etc. I do believe that's what I said. It's a good thing
Yes,
we're
but
recording. You can watch it.
I just,
Where
a
I
little bit of contradiction
didn't,
there,
where
but
I didn't want to heavy-handed was if you had an Airbnb that say was only open for the summer, and we got into licensing or whatever, the expense of running that type of business versus a full-time business. That's where I was trying to make the difference.
And I was agreeing with you on points right up to, it was just the point where, I don't know, you can put them in a different, as far as running 2 weeks a year or whatever, that could come down to the tax department, how much
But that's what I'm
commercial
talking about.
tax you would
Yeah.
charge. I get that part, and
Yeah.
I fully agree
But
with you.
I just didn't,
And
I wanted to make
just let you know,
sure that
Deputy,
you
I
knew.
did hear you, so we're all good, we're all good.
Your challenge, though, that you mentioned that we shouldn't worry about somebody who's only doing it, 2 weeks of the year or whatever. If we ignore that reality, that person there still could be a potential issue there because of exits and everything else. Like if you put someone, I got an open basement. I can,
Yeah.
I can rent that out if I wished. Their only way out is up the stairs and out
Yeah.
unless they break out the 2 windows. There's no exit. And there's always that fine line of when do you consider it a business and when do you consider
Yeah.
it a hobby.
S-
And I think within the licensing we have, I think I can live with the small stuff and let that go. But if you do it more than a month, you're not anymore. Because you can say short term,
Yeah.
but that short term is a very important short term to the people, to the safety and for those that were there. So even if it's just July, August, doesn't
But-
matter. It's got to be done.
But to my point, okay, so I have a room in my house that technically would be perfect for an Airbnb. It's got a separate entrance, it's got a separate staircase, it's where my son lives.
Perfect.
However, if I did consider that, what I was saying is I would have no problem somebody coming in to make sure it's safe. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
But I would be the type of person that that would not be my business. I would not want people calling me in November to rent out that room. I may do it for the Playhouse actors or something like that. So I'm okay with going through the safety thing. I just would not want to be paying the same licensing as a B&B that runs, B&B that runs 365 days a year. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay.
I'm okay on the safety part. I'm just saying that, if these short term, summer only, and maybe the person goes away to Florida, whatever the case may be, I just don't think it's a 365 day a year business is different than, say, somebody who just wants to do it for, say, the summer. I'm not saying they shouldn't be looked at. I'm just saying the two are a little different. A little apple and oranges. Kind of
Okay.
Toronto and South Dundas, apples and oranges.
Fair enough. We can probably set up a licensing scale to that regard. However, it still takes just as much work to inspect a small place as it does a big place. So you have to keep that in mind as we do that. So we may end up subsidizing the last ones, the small ones, to encourage people to come to South Dundas.
Well, yeah. And I mean, the risk is if we're too heavy-handed, say you shut it down, people just go, fine, I'm not going to do it, then we will have a negative impact, right?
I agree, I don't want a negative impact. We got to hit that balance. So I think we've said enough. It sounds like we want to not regulate it through zoning as much as licensing, so, Nicole, you can bring us something as a draft for that kind of effect, and we can go through it. You've heard council's concerns about long-term, short-term, and the implications if we overcharge, so, if we can come up with a fair system. We're not Toronto, I know that. We're not even actually Prince Edward County, but at least they've done something from a small scale that we can kind of relate to, I think.
Yep.
You know, and we can go from there. Does that sound fair? Does that make sense to you, Nicole?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, anything further?
I just got one last comment on, it's not it's not going towards the Airbnb, but there's situations where, I know people that go away for 3 months in the winter. You can call it house sitting, but they would actually charge someone to use their house just for the 3 months, kind of look after the house and give them a break on rent and stuff like that, and it happens. I don't know if this is something we gotta.
I don't
But
think
it is-
that's, I don't think it's the same.
No?
No, this is more
Okay,
short-term
I'm just-
rental where you know,
Yep.
you go for a weekend to a house or a week, like if you go to PEI or you, let's say you don't live in South Dundas and you want to enjoy our waterfront, then you go to the Airbnb up my road and have a, you know,
Yeah.
use the water. You can do a lot of things there, so.
I'll
That,
strike that comment.
okay.
Good to go.
Anything else, Nicole, that you'd like, and then we'll just go ahead?
Yeah, just to put Councillor Mellon's mind at ease, we do review Part 8 under the building code with South Nation. If there's an increase in occupancy or if there's any renovations that go above 15% of the initial primary dwelling, we do initiate a septic review.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that's somewhat important, especially if you're near a sensitive area, you know, water, whatever, water courses, you know. You don't wanna overflow the septic. I don't want.
Nicole,
Go ahead,
Nicole,
Tim.
you also do a similar thing when you're going to, if you add fixture count, like adding a new bathroom and new kitchen.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any further comments, Tim?
No, Mr. Mayor, I think it'd be quite a simple amendment that we can deal with for the zoning bylaw. I think it'll be working with Nicole to make sure the bylaw matches what we want to do for the licensing side.
Okay. Anything further? If not, go ahead.
Nothing on that, Mr. Mayor. Nicole did mention the fact, and there was mentioned by a couple of councilors about this idea of second units in houses. It is an issue that we will have to come back to council with on a completely separate matter on this, because the province in their last amendment to the Planning Act put in a requirement that second units, they call them additional units now, are actually permitted in almost every single detached, semi-detached, and townhouse as of right. So we're going to have to come back to you with a discussion on that because it doesn't have any sensitivity to the rural parts of the municipality at all. But we'll have a chat to Nicole about how to proceed with that.
Okay, yeah, that is a separate issue. I know from what I've been hearing from the province, they want to have additional housing. This is one of their ways of doing it, so, okay.
Correct.
That's separate, and we won't go into that discussion today, so.
No, we won't, but we will be back to you with a discussion on that separately.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim, and thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll have a 5-minute break before we go on.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll resume our meeting. So the next discussion item, and this is something that I pulled on and relates to joint tendering. So I'll speak a bit to it. The counties do a joint tendering often on trucks and paving and stuff like that. We do a bit of it, but maybe not as much as we should. But we also maybe should look at opportunities working with North Dundas or South Stormont, maybe on roads projects or stuff like that. So that was something that I thought could produce some, I guess, synergies and working together and cost savings in the end. So I'll turn it over to the Director of Transportation to give his remarks on those subjects, and then we as council will decide if, or have a discussion on whether it's a good idea or not. So, Jeff, go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So the topic of joint tendering, that can kind of swing either way. Sometimes you fit well on it, and sometimes you take her in the behind just because there's not a lot of people that submit bids. So I guess I'll run down what we already do as far as joint tendering, and then I'll leave it up to you as what route we want to go moving forward. So presently, the municipality of South Dundas, we participate in the joint tendering with our calcium, dust suppressant. We participate with the salt within SD&G, purchasing signs and the signposts, our roadside weed spraying, our centerline painting. Now, when I say centerline painting, that's with the paint unit that paints the yellow lines and the white lines. We didn't do any this year, but we will be doing it again next year. And our stop sign, the stop bars, crosswalks, that's all done through joint tendering with SD&G. What we did not participate with is our pickup trucks and our purchasing of our plow truck this year. Pricing with our plow trucks, I don't know why, but we seem to be getting pretty reasonable pricing through International when we put out our own tender. So we just haven't jumped on. The last time we jumped on with the plow truck, it came in yellow and it didn't come in red. So that was the last time we participated with the plow trucks. So that's kind of where we're at right now with our joint tendering. If there's any more questions, I can definitely try to answer them to the best of my abilities.
Okay, I'm going to start over here because I know Councilor Wells is something that he's probably thought of and thinks has good opinions on.
Well, like Jeff summed up a lot of it. Like, I don't know if we can reach out more as far as like paving and stuff like that. Getting back to the dump trucks going to what the counties pay and what the municipality paid, and I can go to the thing there when you guys purchased the 6x12 galvanized trailer, and I forget what it was, but I went and bought one about 5 days after we put the tender out, and I got it $300 cheaper than the municipality did. So it's just, it's hard like that because a joint thing is a good thing, a little more buying power maybe, but then there's a side thing where whether it's upper tier, lower tier, or whoever, it tends like the vendors always seem to want to charge more or try to get as much as they can because they figure our pockets are deep. And I'm all for if there's any way on anything we can split right from whatever to whatever, I would be definitely for it. I find it hard sometimes with the higher up you go, things are like you start federal, provincial, right down. It costs you more to get stuff. But I'm all for this joint tender just to save money if we can make work in any department or anything. I would definitely be for it. So that's it for now, Mayor.
Councilor Mellon?
Yeah, I gotta agree. I mean, any avenue we can explore for cost savings. I guess, what we're doing now, it seems to be working fairly well. I guess the one thing I guess we'd have to make sure that everybody's on the same page if we were gonna, like you had said, Mayor Bybels, North Dundas and South Stormont or one of the other lower tier municipalities, we would have to make sure that we're at budget time, that everybody's, looking at the same thing, so that when the tender comes out, like, I mean, the difference in budget time or the difference in time frame as far as the municipality or township, when they want to approve, we're gonna buy new trucks or half tons or whatever. So that would have to be explored when those, when everybody's gonna be on the same page. If you go by your asset management, your fleet reserve, but that can change every year at budget time, we take this one out or put that one in or whatever. So I agree with what Councilor Wells is saying, explore every option. I think we need to look at timeframes for when we would need to know if we were buying trucks together or anything, when everybody can have their wish list in and whether it's approved by that individual council to make sure everybody. Road work, possibly, I think, especially if you're doing repaving or tar chipping, whatever, a surface treatment, especially between North Dundas and South Stormont, just because of the geographical location of ourselves, you might get better pricing. But then, on the other hand, if we joint tender with a large scope, we may eliminate some contractors and maybe just won't be able to handle it. I think we need to look at that, if you're, like Ontario Street, I don't think we would wanna joint tender that just because of the size and the scope of that project. Whether or not that would work as a joint tender with the counties or with another township, lower tier municipality. I'm not sure if that, just because of the size of the work, because it's a whole season job, something like that. But when somebody's coming in and they're tarring, repaving a road or whatever, I think we can look at that definitely. And any place there's savings to be had, let's be having it.
Myself personally, I think the joint tendering is good in certain ways, certain material. A question for Jeff. Jeff, whenever we joint tendered with the trucks with the counties, do they take our specs or is it their specs only?
No, they take their specs and then I modify it. Because I'll give you an example. The counties, when they purchase a plow truck, the plow truck is a 10-speed. It's got a set forward front axle, and it comes with a brine liquid tank because they apply liquid directly to the road. Well, there's three options that our trucks don't have. One, we don't have liquid. Two, we use a setback front axle. And three, we use an automatic. So I changed three items on their tender. Their trucks are yellow, mine's red. So there's 4 items that we've already changed on the tender. And we haven't got down into the nuts and bolts of the truck yet.
Thank you. That's what I thought, but I wasn't too sure, so I had to get a clarification on it. I think whenever it comes to ordering dump trucks or half-ton trucks, that is a tender that we should take care of ourselves. The other tenders joint tenders that we do have in place with the counties or whoever is good tenders. But I think that when it comes to our vehicles, we should have our own tenders on that.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Now, when you say a half-ton, Councillor Lewis, we could definitely jump in with the counties on the tendering process for half-tons because they're just white. So, I mean, all we have to stipulate is it a regular cab with an 8-foot box? Is it an extended cab with a 6'5" or 6'6" box? Or is it 4-wheel drive? I mean, those tenders are easy. But when you get into the bigger stuff like the plow trucks, I mean, I could jump in. We're just going to be doing a lot of changes to the tender document, that's all.
Thank you.
So Jeff, aside from the color issue with the plow truck, was the tender a good, like whatever you got the price back, was it lower? Aside from the color, take the color out of it, because it sounds like there was a misstep at some point, but if it was the right color, would it have been a savings?
So if I could just ask CAO Garrity, he was here. I had just started with the municipality when that truck was ordered, so I can't speak on how much we paid for it. So Shannon, like, was that comparable to prices we're getting right now, or where are we at?
I believe there was some savings on going to joint tender.
Okay.
The only issue was that it came in yellow instead of red.
I hate to hang the hat
Yeah.
on the fact that, oh, we won't do it just because there was a mistake with the color. If there were savings, then to everyone's point, then it should be considered, right? Because it's a savings process. My other comment was just around Councillor Mellon's comment with asset management. Hopefully, as that rolls out, if there's a blip where one year we need 3 trucks, then maybe the conversation can start sooner, comparable with the municipalities around us, and say, hey, we're looking at 7 trucks total, and that would make sense to push. So that was my only comment.
Go ahead.
The only one caution I would say from a joint tendering, and I don't think it's a barrier by any means, is that you have a lot of municipalities that pass their budget at different times of the years, right? So we could be ready to go out and tender in February because we've got our budget passed, but meanwhile, maybe North Dundas hasn't passed their budget till April.
Yeah.
So they don't know what their capital are. But I think if we can get to those efficiencies, and I've made a note to discuss at our CAO's meeting that we have in October, is there more communication and dialogue that can happen amongst the lower tiers and upper tiers and say, here's what we're thinking of for next year's budget, here's some items, and do we have anything that we can maybe check off on that, and then look at some possible collaboration?
Yeah, because the budget is tricky, but the asset management
Correct.
program that everybody's being forced to do should come into play a little bit, in the sense that you've got kind of that forecast of what the big purchases you may be considering. So-
Right, and everybody's doing roads need studies and bridge studies, right? So you kind of already have a roadmap of what you're looking at doing over the next few years. So unless, we totally go off that path, we should have a pretty good idea on what we're doing. And maybe there's some collaboration at that time. We can look at finding some cost savings.
Okay, so I got a bunch of notes here. I think planning is the key, especially with asset management. Every municipality knows what they're gonna need next year. They have a fair idea. Maybe councils will cut it back. But in the end, like the counties did their 1/2-ton and 3/4-ton truck and tender in August. That's when we awarded it. South Stormont got in on that one, so I think there's opportunities from a joint tendering point of view. Now, council will have to understand that, if you do something like this, the locals can bid, and actually, the county's actually asked all the local dealers in the Cornwall area on those trucks. So happened this year, inventory is a big issue, so none of them wanted to bid. Those trucks actually came from Collingwood and Owen Sound. Or, no, Aurelia. So they came a long way, but you got better pricing. Doesn't matter where they come from. In the end, a truck's a truck's a truck. I'm not sure color's a big issue. I know ours is white, county's would be gray, but South Stormont did it. I don't know if they wanted a gray truck or not. If we did paving, and I'm not, and Ontario Street's out of this. Ontario Street's a unique little, one big project on its own. But if you're, let's say, paving a road out in South Dundas, and it's pavement, not surface treatment, fog steel, your best bang for the buck is on the county joint tender, wherever they go. Whether And because I've never seen pricing as good as what counties get on paving. And part of the key is mobilization. Like if they're doing 31 and I'm gonna use Garland Road as an example, you wanted to pave it, and I'm not saying it needs paving right now. But if the machine is there, it's that mobilization that saves you the money. They're there, they can just do it. Whereas in the counties look at that when they look at their tendering, how do we make things work that they don't have to move all their equipment from point A to point B and then move back to point A again? So, and that's all cost, right? You know how it costs money to move stuff around. And working with the lower tiers, like North Dundas or South Stormont, I know North Dundas have gotten back into the paving mode, and we're probably not there, but South Stormont, my understanding is they do surface treat fog seals. So, you know, if you work with them on and it's all, it's, I said, planning. You know, we've worked with South Stormont on the water chems. That was a joint tender, same kind of building, so that makes, you know, it's good that we do all the other stuff, but I think there's opportunities that would allow us to, I think, save dollars and work and work with other municipalities to come up with solutions that work for all of us at the same time. The county plow truck, I don't know. I see some differences that maybe we're getting a little. Well, they do cost more. You know, putting an automatic instead of a 10-speed is money. If that's the preference of the roads department, I know that there are others have said, well, the counties can drive 10-speed, anybody can drive 10-speed. Maybe not in the towns, but out in the country, they should be able to do that. There should be, you know, paint shouldn't be an issue. Paint is paint is paint. One's red, one's yellow. I know the county's put on extra equipment, and if you ever, the county document to buy a cabin chassis and plow and dump boxes, they are separate, is it's a 50-page document. Like Ben's got it right down to the nuts and bolts. I'm not saying we need to do that, but you know, and I've had challenges with those because that kind of, you limit your scope. It's just like say, okay, this is the truck I want, but it's got to have this piece of equipment on it. And if nobody else sells it, I guess you're buying it from them, and you got to be careful in those situations. But you know, I encourage staff to plan ahead. You know, if you need 4 trucks next year, you got to say, okay, what do you guys need? What do you guys need? What do the counties need? And then go from there. We've missed the county half done because they bought 4. They're done for a while. But North Dundas is always an opportunity we should work with, and South Stormont for sure, and North Stormont, and the Glengarrys if necessary. We got to start thinking together somewhat. We're not one municipality. We're still our kind of own bailiwick, but I think in the end, if there's opportunities, yes. If it doesn't work out, I agree, then we go on our own. I don't go and buy chems and seeds with, you know, another farmer down the road. It does happen. I did it actually once where I bought all the corn seed for a number of farms, and it does save us dollars. So the challenge will be we're all think a little different in that line, and so do we as municipalities. But any opportunity we should get, we should at least take an advantage of. Jeff, seen your hand flying.
So we do, the supervisors of SD&G, we do get together and we do talk about what do we foresee the next year as tendering items. And we sit down and we run them off, who needs a plow truck, who needs this, who needs that. So when it comes to paving, the last paving job that the municipality of South Dundas did was that little section of Haynes Road. And I did jump in with the counties as far as the asphalt goes. Because like you said before, we can't get a price for asphalt like they can. And that's why, because they deal in such a great volume, right? As far as double surface treatment with a fog seal, the counties do not do that type of application. So we're kind of on our own for that. The micro, yes, but we're getting comparable prices with micro as what the counties are getting because they're using our yard as a storage facility to do the micro. So when they move into kind of the southwest corner of SD&G, all their equipment is at my yard at Matilda. So we're getting comparable prices, even though we didn't jump on board with them. We're still right there. now that we know with our roads needs study, what roads we're gonna be doing in the next 4 or 5 years, definitely, I could jump on board with the micro. If we happen to do a single lift, a micro, or paving projects, by all means, that's not even a question. We're gonna jump in on with them because of the purchasing power. But just, if I could hit on the plow truck again, this year's plow truck was an abnormal year because we got the roll off. We added a whole bunch of different features to that truck. If we were just to buy a regular plow truck, by all means, I could jump in with them. We're gonna have to make a few changes, but yes, the municipality could participate in the joint tendering.
Yeah, and I will agree with you, Jeff, for this year's truck was unique and we got more equipment on and that's something to count, that's something we need to take control of and take care of, so. Anyway, we'll go around the table once more and
I just have one comment left. Like Shannon said, you guys have your CAO meetings in October, and it'd be a good time to just say, okay, this is what the assets management we have, so we know that, but everything pertaining to what we're want to purchase or whatever, because you'll have a general idea, then you just ask like North Dundas and South Stormont, you have a little thing and say, ask, because regardless, it wouldn't matter whether our budget is a month early or later. Like, we went out for tender, the company knowing, okay, we're bidding this, but they won't need the product or whatever the tender thing is till the following month. So it all comes into one big pie, but at the end of the day, everyone in that circle would have to know what you want, then it'd just be everyone talking to each other, and I think it would work if everyone just got together and just save, because the idea, everyone wants to save money. Correct. Time, like, the way things go now, so that's pretty much it, Mayor.
Councilman
I like what I hear, you know, and, you know, Jeff and Shannon, you know, they reach out to their counterparts in the counties or other lower tier municipalities, and to your point, Mayor, I sort of squinched a little bit whenever you mentioned that all the county trucks came from way up west somewhere, but if we give the local, if you will, dealerships in South Dundas, Cornwall area enough of a lead-up time, let's face it, they know that, hey, you know, there might be a joint tender for 8 trucks. They can sharpen their pencils, so it doesn't eliminate them or by any stretch of the imagination. It just it gives them an opportunity to maybe you know, go out there and explore and say, hey, you know, we'll get some trucks from. They can bring the trucks in from Bowmanville or wherever, you know. So I don't. I almost thought then I thought, hey, you know, they have the same opportunity to bring trucks in and at a very competitive pricing. You know, keep it local. We like to keep it local, but. We want to keep our dollars local, you know, in our pockets of our residents, so, you know, there's cost savings there, so, yeah, I've got an issue, I think we need to explore this.
I think this has been a very good discussion, and Jeff, it's good to hear that you do work with the counties and South Stormont on certain tenders, which I did not know that we worked with South Stormont, so that's good news to have. And it's all about the almighty dollar. You know, if we can save $5 today, well, it's still in our bank account.
Okay. I think we had a good discussion. I think, you know, staff gets the feeling that council wants to, you know, to work as best you can with the other municipalities surrounding us, including STG. I will caution Councilor Mellon on our purchasing policy. In the end, everybody gets an equal crack at it, you know, and we have to, and I'm sure when we do discuss purchasing policy, we're going to be told that putting it in there and thinking that the locals are going to be favored will challenge us. So as long as everybody gets equal crack, then so be it, you know. In my world, you know, with the internet and everything else that's available, we can get vehicles from everywhere. I just bought a piece of equipment from Springbrook, Ontario, and for those who don't know where that is, it's north of Belleville. And they dragged her here and dragged someone home, so it can happen. price wins, and what you need wins sometimes too, so. Okay, anything from you two on that? We're good?
Nope, we're good, perfect.
Okay, then we'll move on to the speed limits. This furthers on to a discussion we had earlier on about speeding and some challenges that some of our residents appear that have with some of the speeds in South Dundas. And as we heard earlier, our current speed signs are basically just suggestions to those who are driving in South Dundas. We go with the 80 and the 50, unless we want to do a bylaw. And it's up to council whether we want to do a bylaw or not. I would suggest we do. However, I'll turn it over to the Director of Transportation to give us his take on the information he has given us, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so thanks, Mayor and Council. So in front of you, you'll see on the letterhead, which starts off with Mayor and Council, that information is taken right from the Highway Traffic Act. I did not make this up. I did not plagiarize it. All I did was copy and paste. So I guess I was a little creative when I did that. So our speed limits presently default to the Highway Traffic Act, which states within a municipality, the speed limit will be 50. Out in the country, the speed limit will be 80. No signage is required. If there is signage, then that means that you are changing from what is stated through the Highway Traffic Act. So in our country roads, there's not one 80-kilometer-an-hour sign because we default to the Highway Traffic Act. Within the towns, municipalities, we default to 50, but we notify of signage when you're entering Morrisburg, entering Iroquois. There is some one-offs that is presently there, and as you can tell, if you go to plow route number 2 off the map, it'll be highlighted in blue. We have some weird setups here. So you'll see on the far right-hand side, you have Parkdale Drive, Grisdale. That is posted as a 50. Doran Creek is posted as a 50. And the Village is posted as 50. Dr. Miller is an 80. Then if you're taking Carmen Road, driving towards the point, Carmen Road from the traffic circle to our campsite is a 50, and then it changes to 60 out to the point. That's the only abnormality within Iroquois. If you go to plow route number 5, which is the Lakeshore Drive plow route, as soon as you leave the village of Morrisburg, it's a 50 out to Mariahtown. When you hit Mariahtown, it turns into 60 out to the west side of Flag Road. And then from Flag Road going to Highway 2, it becomes 70. The north-south road, which is Coyle Drive, it is a posted 50. Stewart Drive is a posted 50, and then everything into the town is 50. If you take plow beat number 6, which is the second half of Morrisburg, the village of Morrisburg itself is 50, and Riverside Drive is 50 kilometers an hour. Which leads us to the last one, which would be plow beat number 1. When you're on County Road 16, driving north towards Dixon's Corners, County Road 16 is a 50, but County Road 18 on the east and west side are posted 60 kilometers. And then when you get into the village, or the little hamlet of Brinston, it becomes 50 on all 4 roads within the little hamlet of Brinston. Those are the only 50s, 60s, and 70s that I believe are in the municipality of South Dundas. All our other roads are defaulted to 80. I will follow your direction on what route you choose to go.
Okay. Yep.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm wondering if any consideration has been given to pedestrian safety zones, because I see in, under the regulations for the HTA, in Regulation 2, we can put different rates of speed through bylaw. And I'm just wondering, have we given any in those troublesome spots where we know there's high pedestrian traffic? Could we not sign it as a pedestrian safety zone or something? I've seen areas in different small towns where they do that. They usually put hashtags, or not hashtags, but crosses on, actually painted on the pavement or a barrier, and then they make it quite obvious, and they knock it down to 30. Have we researched that? Like, I know that other areas have had that issue, and I think we've got so many walkers in South Dundas that I think it would be important we could have these identified, similar to a safety zone, right? Because around safety, I don't think that's mentioned in here, but I'm pretty sure around schools there's designated speed limits. But anyway, a safety school zone, but we could consider it a pedestrian safety zone.
You could. What we paint right now is X's on the road are crosswalks.
Okay.
So out in front of the municipal office, there's an X on the road. At the public school in Iroquois, there's an X painted on the road. It's kind of where our crosswalks are.
Okay, so would there, like,
That's-
have you done any research on what pedestrian, like if we chose these zones, what symbol would be on the pavement?
We haven't, and the reason why is because I haven't physically received a complaint about a speed zone. So whether you're receiving them or council's receiving them, I have yet to receive anything that says we need to put additional signage in a certain spot.
Well, I know your speed indicator sign, when it was put on Lakeshore, I got a couple of messages about the fact that it helped quite a bit. And I do believe that speed indicator was not set at 50 for the green, it was at 40, correct? Or 30?
No.
It was set at
No,
50?
It's set for the speed that road is.
Oh, because I didn't get green when I hit 50. Anyway.
No, you won't get green at 50.
But,
Green at 45, maybe.
but, okay, so I mean, I can only speak for me. I have gotten some positive feedback about the fact that as soon as we put something different on that section of Lakeshore, the speed reduced. The problem is people get used to it and then they leave. I found it interesting in the HTA whenever they speak to times of day. So that's kind of an interesting consideration. You know, it's tricky. It's like the conversations we've had. Unless the OPP are going to come in and actually do enforcement, though, the fastest way to slow people down is just to hand out a bunch of tickets, and then that's usually the end of it for a bit. But I would like to see some consideration to pedestrian safety zones where there is a reduction in speed, it's well marked, and whether or not we would decide to do different times of day, that could be a possibility. I mean, that's usually when you're in a 30 and you're looking around, it's 10 at night and there's nobody there, you're kind of sitting there going, what's going on with this? So, you know, but I think it's required. We do have some people with a heavy foot, and there's people that don't even intentionally speed, that just need to be reminded to look at their odometer and see what speed they're going. So I'd like to see something done with those sections.
Okay.
I really don't have an issue with anything that you've got marked 50, 60, or 70 zones. The only thing is I got a complaint one day, and I told the gentleman to put it in writing and send it to the municipality, that he would like to see a 50-kilometer-an-hour sign just on the other side of Stewart Creek here in Morrisburg. He stated that once you got out of Morrisburg, there was no sign until you got to Mariatown. And that's the only complaint that I got, and I told him to do a letter. Now I don't know if he did or not, but I'm happy with the speed zones.
Councilman Allen?
Oh, yeah, I guess first, Jeff, so you're proposing in here in Iroquois, the area you have underlined in pink, I guess, it would be 50 through there on number 2 highway?
Okay, we only do municipal roads, okay?
Okay, all right, so, okay.
All
that-
county roads are not our jurisdiction, so
Okay, I was thinking
please
you're
keep that
talking
in
number
mind.
2, because right now it's,
No, we don't regulate county roads.
I know there was some concern back a few years ago, people thinking it should be number 2 coming from the east into Iroquois should be reduced, closer to the golf club road or whatever, from that point in. But anyways, okay. Haynesville, right now, well, that's, it's already reduced. It's down to 70 going through Haynesville and County Road 1.
Okay.
The four-way stop.
Once again,
Yeah, I know.
do not talk about any county roads. We have zero jurisdiction and we don't have the time to deal with it, please.
All right, well, we got, okay.
You can bring that up to your county council members. There has been a discussion about Haynesville and Glen Stewart coming to our next county meeting.
Okay, like, we'll just forget about Dixon's then, because that's surrounded by county roads. I haven't got a problem with the speed limits there. Riverside Heights at 50, yeah, that's fine, Morrisburg at 50. Lakeshore Drive, I guess, it gets awful confusing, we start at 70, and then we get to 60, then we get to 50. Personally, I think I'd make, there's even a small section in here, yeah, I would just make it 70 right through to about Mariahtown, and then drop it down to either 60 or 50 to try and, but, 70 along Lakeshore from number 2 going east, till you get up to maybe Cole Drive, or just by Mariahtown, drop it down to, 50 from there into Morrisburg, or 60 from there into Morrisburg, I think would be, probably, to my mind, adequate enough. There is a lot of pedestrian traffic, like, Deputy Mayor Gardner has alluded to, so, yeah. All right, that would be, I guess, my 2 cents worth is just Lakeshore. We got 3 different speeds along Lakeshore. I guess that last little chunk just before we get into Morrisburg, if you will, blends in with the 50 in Morrisburg. But, yeah. That's all I got for now.
Councilor Wells.
Mayor, can I just jump in there real quick?
Yeah,
Well, Councillor Mellon, I appreciate what you said about Lakeshore. Keep in mind, we received that road from the counties. The counties have done studies on speed limit for Lakeshore Drive, and they were set based off of county recommendations at the time. So where it says 70, they did a study on why that road should be 70. Then it reduces down to 60 because you're coming into a campsite zone. And then it goes to 50 as you're approaching the municipality. If you choose to change it, I'll back you. But those were set by the counties when they owned that road. That's all I wanted to emphasize.
Okay, somebody must have did a study somewhere, did they?
Well, that's all, it was a county road at one point, right?
Yeah.
go ahead.
And actually, we had a discussion there quite a while ago about the speed limits on there. I really don't have a lot of issues with any of it. The only thing I would change, like, we can't do nothing about the county's roads. The only thing I would change, if I was gonna do anything from, out in front of Mariahtown from 60 up to, just past Coyle, I guess, I would put that 50, starting at Coyle right through, straight through to, Morrisburg. Just for the fact, if you go up,
It is 50 starting into the west end of Mariahtown. That's where it is now. The
Oh,
map
this-
is not correct, no. The 50,
Oh.
the 50.
Well, I didn't know that. I was just going on
I know
the
that.
map.
The 50 does start at the west end of
okay,
Mariahtown.
then I guess I have no issue.
Yeah.
I'm,
That's a little out. Sorry, Jeff.
No.
I'm I'm pretty
going
much
with
good
that.
with everything. All the hamlets and that, what we have control over should be 50. Other than that, going to the Highway Traffic Act, where there's no signs, go back to the 80 and 50, and I don't think there's much of an issue here, but anyways, that's,
Okay, so the first issue is we don't have a speed bylaw. Without a speed bylaw, if I drive 80 on Lakeshore Drive, there's no ticket. Because it doesn't have any legal consequences. As the rate of speed bylaw, which was 128, section 2, council municipality may, for motor vehicles driven on a highway or portion of a highway under its jurisdiction, by bylaw prescribe a rate of speed different than the rate set out in subsection 1 that is not greater than 100 kilometers an hour and may prescribe different rates of speed for different times of day. So the counties have a speed bylaw. Every time the speed changes, it literally says in the bylaw, in the schedule, let's say County Road 2 from Allison, well, pretty close Allison, to so many meters past Merkley is 50, or whatever it is. It's that specific. It's a lot of work, but it's the only thing that gives you teeth. It's the only thing that gives you teeth, because if you took it to court,
okay.
you lose.
Would it be safe to say, Mayor, though, the only thing that would pertain to a bylaw if we create one would actually be Lakeshore Drive in our municipality?
Incorrect, because there's other places I think we need to deal with.
Okay, I just,
Right now, we can't. If somebody comes in and says, somebody's going 60 by the public school, well, we can say they can drive 50, but we can't say they can drive 40, because we haven't got a speed bylaw. However, if all the parents in Morrisburg Public or Iroquois Public came to us, say, we want the speed reduced down to 30, and Jeff does his study, or somebody does a study and says, recommends it to 40, and we as council say, no, we're going down to 30, the only way we can apply that is a speed bylaw. The only way we can do it.
okay, it was-
We can't just stick up a sign up and say, everybody do it, because it will not have legal authority or legal teeth. So that's, I think, the number one on how that we can regulate speeds in South Dundas. It's any jurisdiction has to do that.
and bylaw is good, like, I don't know how,
It's not bylaw. OPP can enforce them. They can't enforce
if
what
we
they
don't
can't
have the
enforce.
bylaw.
That's right.
Correct.
Because then they can go to court and say, well, he was speeding by this municipality's
Yeah.
speed bylaw. It's not our job, it's still OPP job.
And I do agree with you, as far as bylaw go, Mayor, I just don't know the depth we have to go, like 50 kilometers, you get down to 30, you can almost walk that fast, really, like, maybe
Well,
by a school.
I'm
but-
being a little facetious, because
Yeah.
I have to point out the extreme,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so I'll continue on, and we can have a discussion after. We don't have to do it, but I'm just telling you, and I see the deputy clerk's nodding his head, without a speed bylaw, we don't have jurisdiction to do what we want to do. Correct?
Correct. Through you, Mayor, that's correct. We would need some kind of bylaw stating out the speeds that you wish to have on those roads. In which case, we can forward that to the OPP for their information as well.
Yeah, so that's how we need to do it. We inherited Lakeshore and kept the signs up, and most people regard them as the speed they're supposed to travel, so that's a good thing. But the speed bylaw is gonna, you specify the roads and the streets you want to have people driving. You can say all Morrisburg is 50 or whatever. Rural, I still think rural is 80. I'm not here to make it that fussy, but wherever we want to change it that's different than section 1, we need to be specific. And it can be done by sections. The Director of Transportation can give us his recommendation on where he thinks the speed should be. We as council still can change them. We've all been on streets in cities that, why are we driving 50 and it's wide open? Like, it becomes, council makes the rule. They should sort of justify it. I wouldn't be ridiculous about it, but, you know, I think of driving through Edwards, and anybody who's driven through Edwards, at 50 kilometers an hour and you're driving, I gotta drive 50 and there's no, like,
Yeah.
like it's less people in
Nobody,
Halbert. And one person has complained and away we go. One thing though that sticks out a little, and I'll ask council's thoughts on this. One thing, our malls are legal roads. Castle Road, Main Street, Plaza Drive, they're all legal roads. We haven't had any incidents in our malls, but I think a 50-kilometer zone on that is faster than it needs to be. We should probably have, I would like to see signs at least down to 30 to make people slow down and think of what's going on. Just a suggestion. As I said, we haven't had issues, but technically it's 50 kilometers an hour.
I'd rather see 20.
Well, I wrote down 20, but I didn't want to go down, you know.
Because even doing 30 kilometers down through
Yeah.
that mall, that's,
And most
That is
people
fast.
don't. Most
No, no.
people don't, but there are the ones that do. And if there's an incident, and somebody said, well, you're speeding, I said, well, I was going 50 kilometers an hour. I wasn't speeding then, right?
that's right.
The village of Prescott has gone town-wide, or it's a town actually, the town of Prescott has gone town-wide to 40 Ks. Others have done it. It can be done in South Dundas if you wished. In Morrisburg and Iroquois, because if you posted on the outside of the village that all village streets are 40 kilometers an hour, then that is the rule. But everybody needs to know that. You don't have to have 40 signs everywhere. You need to have, you know, a sign saying all streets are 40 in village of Morrisburg. The reason I say that is that most people drive 10 over the limit, close to 10 over the limit. So you know, 50 is the default, 60 is what people drive in a lot of places, unless the road doesn't feel like you should be driving that. It's all about road feel, you know, and how things go. No, like once Ontario Street is paved, it's going to get faster because it's smooth and people don't have the feel of a rough road slowing them down.
I see
You know,
that.
if anybody comes to me and wants to pave St. Lawrence Street, I'm going to say, until I see potholes, I'm going to leave it where it is because there's a school there. It forces people to drive slower. It's
Because-
rough, I understand that, but it's that roughness or speed bump thing that slows things down. But it's an option. I think if, you know, one thing that can be challenging, we start asking residents for their suggestions, we'll be all over the place, but the only way we do that is with some guidelines. There's no doubt about it. Like, if this is a good start, I'm not here to change most of this. It's a good start. However, as I said, there's no legal to this. If you want to make it legal, we got to start down that road. And if you want to change other things, you got to make it legal. So that, from my point of view, that's our start, and then and this is the base, and then we can go from there. If we have complaints, I think the speed signs are great. They give us the information, and in fact, most people aren't speeding. We've seen those numbers when they come back. They do slow people down, but I mean, and you're never going to stop everything. Like about a month ago, for some reason, I woke up at 3:15, and all I heard was a big zoom on Lakeshore Drive. I don't know who he's going, but he wasn't going 70 kilometers an hour. I can guarantee you that. So, that's all I'm going to say for now. We'll go around the table again, and maybe we'll ask staff on where they think that we should go, and then we'll go from there. I'm going this way.
Okay.
So,
I think the foundation is good. I think work with that and then add on any. I would, if the staff, whenever we have that conversation, maybe pedestrian zones are not related to speed. Maybe it's just an indicator that there's a lot of pedestrians walking around. Maybe that's an opportunity, I don't know. I'd like to see some options put on the table once we do that foundational document.
I think that we should have a bylaw in place, because I know I've heard a couple of police officers say that we cannot write a ticket if there's no bylaw on speed. I would like staff to do a little investigating. I like that idea of 40 kilometers in the villages, because I know living on Augusta Street, she's from Fifth Street to Lake Shore, she's wide open, and I don't live far from the corner. When they go by my place, they're most likely doing at least 70 kilometers an hour, some of them. Not all of them, but there is some guys out there with a real heavy foot. And I really do like the idea of dropping the speed limit going into the shopping center areas. But my recommendation would most likely be 20 kilometers over the 30. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Well, you had a very good demonstration of it this summer,
For
working
6
at
months,
Valuemart
Yeah.
as a door person, so
Yeah.
you've seen, they're not really flying there, but you get a good feel.
Yeah.
You have a good feel of that.
That's
'cause
right.
Of your,
yes.
yeah, I know you're not going fast.
No. Don't want to get dirt in the truck.
I know. Okay, Council Mellon, municipal roads only.
Well, I think Fulton Road should be, no, I'm sorry. Getting sloppy. No, I agree. So right now, we can't write a ticket out if anybody's doing 80 through Morrisburg.
They can write tickets out, but if I take you to court, then,
Well, then-
well, going through 80 through Morrisburg, yes, but not on Lake Shore
Not
Drive,
on
because
Lake
it becomes a rural area. Once you get past Mariah Town, it hasn't got the built-up feel you need to do it.
Okay, yeah, so we need this, I think, for sure. And like Councilor Wells already alluded, 70, and then, if it's from the west end of Mariah Town in, and I think we can look at, and this is a great starting point, as far as I'm concerned, a great starting point. Gotta start somewhere, it's not gonna be iron and stone. If we have a bylaw, then, if we have to have an area that, maybe because of pedestrian traffic or, there's an issue there, or, if we want to reduce it more so even in the malls, or, yeah. Go for it.
Now, Councilor Wells.
Yeah, like everyone said here, this is a very good starting point. What I would recommend is, Jeff, you go out and you add what you figure, because you're the director of transportation, what you think would be good. I do agree with the mall putting it down at 20 kilometers an hour, because as of now, it's 50. And 40 maybe through towns or whatever. But just maybe bring something back, then we definitely need a bylaw to enforce this, and when you bring what you recommend, we can sit here and have a discussion and tweak everything and get things in motion.
Okay, I think that makes sense. I think, the deputy clerk can draft up the speed bylaw, because there's lots to follow, and then, the schedule can use what we have for a base to start. And, it needs to be very specific, but that's the way bylaws or any law is. And as Councilor Wells alluded to, if there's areas of concern that the Director of Transportation have, then he can bring that in a draft schedule, and we can debate those. I think the mall thing is something you can add to it pretty easily. I think that concern is pretty high in everybody's list, but and then I think we can have a debate if we want to drop villages down to 40 and how we do that. So, is that fair enough?
Yep.
Okay, so any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So just to clarify, those maps, I didn't make any of that up. That's where there is an existing 50 signs. There's an existing 60 sign. I didn't make this stuff up.
Well,
So,
we understand
as far
that,
as the
Jeff.
starting point, I don't know who put those there, but they're there. The only spot that does not have a 50 sign is the west side of Haynesville. coming into the little hamlet itself on Haynesville Road, we would have to put a signage there, but I'm happy with what I see right now.
Yeah, okay.
So, I just don't want Councilor Mellon to think that these numbers came out of the blue and I just plopped them on the map, because they were already there, so I can't take any credit for that.
All we're saying was a very good base, and it's just,
Yeah.
if you wanna add to it.
Yeah, we're not disputing what was there. I think some of them, a lot of them came from counties, but some of them didn't. So South Dundas put up the sign on Coyle Road Drive. South Dundas took a 60 sign and made it 50 on Riverside Drive once upon a time, because I remember father-in-law lives on Riverside Drive. I remember 60, and I know it's 50 now, and I don't have an issue with that. But it has no legal, there's nothing binding legally to it, and since it's only dense on one side, it may not fit in the box of being an urban setting if you go deeper into this, into the weeds here of the Highway Traffic Act. So, and Coyle, if Coyle's a 50, then somebody may say, well, why isn't Parlow Road a 50 or Flag Road a 50 or, between certain points. So let's start with this, and then we can make it evolve as we go along. But without the tools, we can't make things change.
Okay, I'll work with Ethan, then we'll get that done.
Okay, Ethan, you any questions?
Sorry, no questions.
Okay, thank you. So with the time where it is, I'm gonna flip the water tower design concept first before council remuneration, and we can always put that on another date if this takes too long.
Hopefully, it might not take too long.
Thanks,
So-
Jeff.
How many choices do we got?
I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So after our last meeting there on Monday, council directed staff to put together some concepts. Kellen has been working on them yesterday. Thank you, Kellen, for that. So what we do have is we took all the feedback that came from council. We've got 6 different options, depending on depending on size.
2.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping is what we could do is maybe get them down to 2, and then what we could do, as I indicated before, is give those 2 concepts as part of our package for our RFP, so that they can tender on both, and then we could go out, if council wanted to, do a survey to see what the thoughts are on one of those two items, if council wanted to go down that road. We took, the suggestions as far as there was some thought about two-tone, there was thought about putting logos on both sides, as well as putting Morrisburg and Iroquois, sizing, whether it was centered along the bowl or either or. So I've kind of marked them as items 1 through 6, so I'll start sending them around to council if you want to take a look at them. If
No
that
pretty
works.
pictures on the smart board?
Well, we could if we wanted to. We have them on the smart. We could. I have them in the email here if that works.
COVID, we should probably do that.
We got
instead of
paper right
passing
there,
paper.
don't we?
I gotta have them all in front of me, I can't just have one at a time.
See if you can get them on the board,
Okay.
please.
Send them to me, Shannon,
You have, okay,
send them to me and I'll share them.
okay. Coming your
Okay,
way right now.
there we go. Perfect.
I realize by having 6, you've raised my percentage of being wrong. Considerably. I had a 50% chance at 2.
They're just sent to you, Brenda. As part of the concept was to keep the bowl white, but then there was also discussion about two-tone, like a South Dundas blue, and then a white or whatever. So we've incorporated all the comments that came on Monday, and Kalen's put it all into different concepts.
Your RFP.
Yeah.
When you send out, if you got it down to 2, you'd have to make sure there's no difference in, I don't know, paint or color, or, cost-wise, if they're gonna be the same, there's
Right.
no issue.
So what we could look
And
at.
I don't know unless it's some fancy thing. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so what we could look at doing, because we have to issue an addendum in regards to the RFP because of all the questions that were answered. If council wanted to, we could say is, here's our 2 concepts, give us a price for each one. And then depending on which one you want to go to, then the price once the RFP closes. So it's totally up to council how they want, unless council's adamant on, this is one that you think it would be the one to go to, and we go from there.
I think we should have two because we have to think of Iroquois, the indigenous sign. So if we had something in place that there's two, what would it cost to put that on there and that, then at least we have something to come back to the public with to say, well, this is a big difference here and
Yep.
go from there.
So-
Instead of just one.
Yeah, so the concepts did not include, so all we did was we just have the Morrisburg one because we expected the Morrisburg would replicate the Iroquois. We didn't put anything as far as an indigenous sign or anything on that. It was just the clear Morrisburg, Iroquois, the logos with or without, and whether we want it white or a two-tone or blue or whatever, so.
And that could be actually a separate thing. You could actually just go out to a sign company for that. That doesn't even have to be part of this tender process, really.
What, the name, you mean? or
Well,
the-
no, not the name. That can be included, but I mean, any other thing, if we want to put our logo on or
Indigenous, okay, I see what you mean.
that can be a separate thing over and above this,
Yeah.
which would make things a lot easier.
It's the wrap concept that
Yeah,
a lot
right,
have
right.
used. It's not painted, it's
Yeah.
computer generated and then stuck on. And that can come from a lot of companies.
Oh, big time, big time.
So that's picture one, Shannon?
Yep, that's picture one.
And there's 6?
There's 6 of them, yeah. That's 2. That's the two-tone, that was 3. Four. Five. And 6. So that was that was kind of some of the discussion at the very end was having Morrisburg be on both sides and then having the logo in between on each side. It was discussed at that time too that the Canadian Tire logo completely comes off moving forward. So this would strictly just be Morrisburg and Iroquois Tower. So whatever council decides as far as the Morrisburg, we just use Morrisburg as the example. We'd replicate that same thing in Iroquois. So
Okay, so 5 and 6, let's flip back and forth, please.
Just the centering of the lettering, I believe.
it was the size.
Oh.
Yeah. So if
No, go the other way again. The 5, 6, there's not much difference. Okay, well, we're going to,
So that's 5.
No, that's,
no, go
Yeah,
the other way,
3.
Brenda, if you can.
that's places
The
I
last
don't want to
two.
go.
Yeah.
Oh, it just says Morrisburg.
Yeah, so that was this one here, so this is 5. And then if you see here from 6, the font
Makes
is
sense.
bigger and it's up more. So
Okay,
it's more centered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
those are
yeah.
your differences.
okay.
Okay.
I'm going to start with Counselor Wells, the creative expert on this. 1 to 6.
1 to 6, I would
I can
take.
pass them all around here if you want, just take.
Well, actually, you can pick 2, but if there's 2, but I mean, if you have one that sticks out, then,
What I'm still sticking to is just something simple, like, so it would just be, my choice would be the small letter Morrisburg and the South Dundas logo, or the big lettering Morrisburg and South Dundas logo.
So that'd be
would
5 or 6,
Yeah,
right?
that would be my choice. As far as putting South Dundas over Morrisburg plus your logo, it'll just, it's way too much. You gotta make it kind of simple. We see our logo, we know it's the town or village of Morrisburg and going to Iroquois, if we go down that route after, like I said, we can just put Morrisburg for now for our RFP, then go out to do, to a graphic company or sign company to do a logo for South Dundas. You could have a logo in South Dundas on one side in Iroquois, and if it, by chance of the Indigenous, we can put that on the other side and that. But as far as the RFP, I would highly recommend we just stick whether we want the big Morrisburg letters or the small. Stay with that concept and then get the RFP out, then go out after for the signage part of it. Because the signage part's, I don't think it's gonna be a lot of money. Like I get a lot of signage done, like for vehicles, and my own signs and that were made, and it's not a expensive thing.
The only comment, I don't know if it's valid or not, would this be the time to do it when the scaffolding's up there? Because to bring somebody else in to do it after the fact, you'd have to, because according to what we're hearing, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get the scaffolding up just to do the scaffolding. So if you have to bring somebody back in to do
Scaffold
it.
paint, but someone's gonna go up and put a signage on.
Yep.
You take something like that, a guy goes up, because there's lifelines on those towers. They go up and they pull up their sign, which would be about this big, that they roll out and put on, like it's not,
Okay,
it would have nothing to do with scaffolding.
okay.
As far as putting a signage on there, it's a person climbing up and putting it on. And with all the safety, like
Yep,
harness
yeah.
and everything, but
Okay, next creative, here, Lloyd.
Those are,
oh, sorry.
Next creative person on council.
yeah.
Don't forget Ace from Halbert, eh?
Well,
We're not having a water tower in Halbert. Paint your silo. You still got the silos up, right?
I like 6, or, and I'm sort of wondering, leaning a little bit towards the logo and South Dundas. Like on number 1, you have the logo to the left, and then you have South Dundas and Morrisburg. 1 and 6 sort of is what I'm thinking there by those.
I'm only gonna pick one. I like number 6. I think with, number 1, it just wouldn't look like South Dundas, Morrisburg, or even South Dundas, Iroquois. I think it would make it too clustered. I like the idea of our crescent and the lettering across the middle of the water tower. So I'm picking number 6.
I like number 6. I think by having the village name, it still gives some identity to the residents in that village, and the South Dundas symbol gives the indicator that we are now South Dundas. I think last time they were painted, they were all individual towns, correct? So I think that by having the logo there, it gives a clear statement that we are the municipality of South Dundas, and there you go.
Okay, so 6 was a clear winner, including myself. Do you want to go out and confuse everybody and put it out, or what does council want to do?
Can I retract number 1?
Can if you want, but
But what we do is, and I agree, we're all thinking 6, and then if you throw 1 out there, 2, I don't know, I don't care. And 6 is very nice. I had, South Dundas, and smaller lettering, even, than Morrisburg, but 6 works.
Yeah, kinda outvoted.
Okay? Hey,
you almost feel like Councilor Wells once in a while.
You know, I'm all for engagement, but I think on this, I think because there's not a lot of room to get creative, I think it would just confuse people. It's more a branding exercise than anything. I don't, like I said, I'm all about engagement, but on this particular item, I think it's just going to create a lot of undue misunderstanding, misinformation, and miseducation.
Okay, anything further?
Now, would we all agree about going out, having the RFP as just doing the lettering, because that has to be painted on? Well, hypothetically, don't have to be painted on, but it's gonna be there because the signage, we can, down the road, like, you can always change it, or like, take it off, put something else on it, if other councils choose to. So would it be safe to say, just, we'll do the RFP for the lettering and go out separate for signage? Like to,
Maybe not just
In the
paint it.
logo?
well, you don't wanna paint that logo
No,
on there.
you
It
could,
costs you a lot more.
Then we should, well, I guess with the letters.
I guess you're gonna have to investigate on
Yeah, we'll ask kind of how's it put on and stuff like that, and
other they do other municipalities, so,
Yep.
you know, it's not like,
I'll reach out to Brocco and just see
Yeah.
how it normally is.
just say there's a
done.
suggestion that the letters are painted,
Yep.
so they have more permanence. Not that the South Dundas is any lower standing, but it is a smaller thing, and as Councilor Wells alluded to,
Mm-hmm.
there are other ways than paint to put that on, and most of it is vinyl wrap now, so.
Yep.
And you get 5, 6, 7 years before the UV ratings do your sign. It's just a matter of going up South Dundas. They take it off, they
Put a new one on.
put a new one on, where the paint nowadays are protected with the exterior paints for HUV and all that.
So why would we reapply the label multiple times instead of doing it? Like, how often does the municipality change? Since I've been associated with municipality, it's always been the.
Well, it was gold and brown when we
Oh,
started.
color. But then we'd have to change, you'd almost want to change the wording, the lettering too, right?
Not necessarily. Well, you would, yeah.
It's pretty crappy with brown and blue.
Yeah, I would. That's why
Just
they
at
went
this
to
point, It's
blue.
just a cheaper application
Yeah.
to,
How about you look at both options?
Yeah.
Yep.
That way you can figure it out.
Yep.
My one question though is the paint quality and how it's spec'd. Maybe it's a question you can ask Rocco, because we don't really want to cheap out on the paint quality.
No, correct.
No, look like
which it should be, if it's gonna be good paint, it should be oil-based.
Yeah, I think it was based on the tender, it did indicate oil.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even though they have good
Yep.
latex paint for exterior, it still doesn't come up to
Okay.
what an oil-based does.
No, I think even if we had to spend a few more dollars, the last thing you want is 10 years from now that we start seeing the rust all starting to come
No,
through and
no.
everything like that, and the council a day looks back and says, how come they saved whatever dollars? You know, to me, that paint job should last 20 years.
Yep.
At least 20 years, without even a hint of, because painting those towers is awful expensive. I know that North Stormont's challenged right now with their Chrysler Tower, which is concrete pedestal and a tub on top, and it was gonna cost them a significant amount of dollars to paint that, and the town of Chrysler would be having to pay for it, and it would have a large burden on their on the users. So,
Okay.
better off to spend a few pennies now and
Agreed.
make sure that the paint stays on for, twice. I think probably in the specs, there should be a guarantee on paint quality.
Yep.
That
No,
would make
I'll discuss it with
logical
Brocco
sense.
and make sure we incorporate that as part of our final addendum.
Okay. Anything further on the water towers?
No, like the only one thing about the paint applications that, like we're going to oil and that, they might even do like a car paint, like a vehicle paint thing with like a spray of clear coat on it after to protect your paint. I don't know the procedures to paint water towers, but it's something maybe that we're not putting in the spec, but it might be something asked, is there, do you guys go about putting a clear coat on your paint after it's because a lot of this is just gonna be sprayed on, it's not, they're not gonna sit there with
No.
rollers, so.
Just
So
go,
it's an application of doing when everything's set up, if you paint it, then you clear coat it after, you get that many more years out of your paint job.
Okay, I would just, good ideas.
Ask
Talk,
questions.
talk to our consultants. I'm sure they've done more than one tower in their life, and we're looking for a good job that has some longevity in it. It doesn't have to be the Cadillac. But if the Cadillac pays for itself, then it's always worthwhile looking as an investment, so.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
it's after 12. I said we'd be done at 12. Council remuneration has been on my list for a while. So what I'll ask council to do, you got the report from the clerk on the changes she has suggested. Analyze how you think you should be remunerated by South Dundas for your workload. See if it's fair. If you see there's holes, suggest some ways of dealing with the holes. If you think it's perfect, then that's okay. If you think it's too much, you can say that too. I think having an opportunity, I see some challenges. In fact, that's my list. So don't go and say it's perfect, because I think that's fooling ourselves a bit. And I'll be honest, this year has been somewhat different in two ways. We've done a lot less social work, there's no doubt about it, because the opportunities are all gone. And I don't think things are going to change for the next foreseeable future. However, some of us have worked a lot more because of what's happened. So we have to find the balance. I'm in the opinion that, we have to be treated fair, but not richly. And you just got to keep in mind that we're the cheapest person at the table most of the time. And if our input's valuable, then I think, it should be at least looked at in that regard, and sometimes it is dollars and cents, so. Is that okay, Madam Clerk? Okay,
We're gonna deal with it next council meeting.
well, clerk and I will figure out if we do it at a committee of the
We can
whole,
send in our-
yeah, because we're not gonna change anything probably between now and the end of the year, but, sets us up for the next year or whatever, so.
Budget time. Okay.
Okay? So we're, with that, we'll, before I ask the clerk, deputy clerk to read the next motion, thanks, council, for your input today. It was a good meeting. I think we we had a good discussion on a lot of good items there, and I think things we had to deal with. So, and thank staff for their input, and thank the audience and reporters for reporting on our action. Deputy clerk?
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Mellon, that the council now adjourn to meet again at the call of the chair.
All heard the motion. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.